Professor Nilika is there with us. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
So
Miriam
good to
Patricia,
reconnect.
should I open?
I don't see Miriam, but I suppose we are ready.
Oh, she's there.
Well, for me, good morning. For you, maybe good afternoon or good evening.
Good evening.
And we are very happy to be with all of you it's our second virtual seminar, but it's the first that we are organizing as chairs, me and Patricia. And well, thank you everyone to be here. And we will begin with Felipe. I will pass you to talk about our commission, Felipe. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Felipe Fernandez from Salvador, Bahia.
Felipe, something happened. You are not listening you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
you're not
I had
audible.
the...
Yeah,
So, hello,
it's fine now.
everybody. I'm Professor Felipe Fernandez from Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. I'm the head of the Council of Commissions of WAU-IUAES, but I'm the former chair of the Commission on Global Feminisms and Queer Politics. I have 5 minutes to present our commission. Our first draft of a commission was presented at the General Assembly of an Inter-Congress in Ottawa. It was presented by Nassim Basiri, Miriam Grossi, and myself. But according to the IUAES rules, it had to be done during a World Congress. So we represented our commission on the 2018 World Congress in Brazil. And we have been participating in all of the WAU, but before IUAES congresses. Ficou mudo? Do you hear me? Okay, Heather can hear me. So we have been very vibrant and active. We have been organizing panels. As I like to introduce our commission, we have a fixed regular panel in every Congress entitled Women in the History of Anthropology. We share the organization of this panel. Sometimes it's Miriam and myself. Sometimes Patricia has organized with us as well, Professor Susana Rostagnol. So in 2017, we presented the commission in Ottawa, and then in 2018, the commission was approved by the General Assembly, and I was the chair, and Susana Rostagnol from Uruguay was the co-chair. In 2021, we organized our first webinar. It was pandemics, so we couldn't be in person in any Congress, but we organized it. During this webinar, I'll share the link on the chat for everyone who wants to see our first webinar. And in 2023, before the World WAU-IUAES Congress organized in New Delhi, India, we held our first elections, and Miriam Grossi from Brazil and Martha Patricia Castañeda from Mexico were elected chair and co-chair. So in this webinar, I'm Susana Rostagnol and myself, we are passing the leadership of our commission to these two magnificent researchers from Latin American background. I think it's going to be a very good term for them. I also am very happy to see here with us a few people. I can see Marisa Ruiz, I can see Dr. Sumit Greet, who were there with us in India, Heather O'Leary, who comes from the Commission on Environmental Anthropology, but we are trying to seduce her to be more a part of our commission alongside with us. We have Saptarshi that I can see here, and many, many other people. Thank you. Nimisha is here as well. Helen is here with us, who's a treasurer for our organization. And I'm very happy to be a part of the second webinar. So the Commission on Global Feminisms and Queer Politics was a dream to have a space within world anthropologies to discuss the themes of gender and sexuality and all the politics surrounding it. And I ask everybody who's joining our commission to have ideas and make suggestions of things that we can do in order to make it even more vibrant and make us get together more often. Okay, so I think my 5 minutes is over. Miriam, do you want me to say anything else?
No, I think it's okay. Thank you very much, Felipe. And I will pass now for Professor Sumendra Patnaik, who was the general organizer of our 19th WAU Congress in Delhi. It's this wonderful Congress that we were there. And we asked him to talk a little about what was the Congress for people who are not there and to know a little more about this great organization that you did in Delhi. I know that you sent us a presentation. I ask for Francine. Yes, you can put Susanna, the presentation of Professor Patnaik. Okay, great.
He's
Professor
asking to be
Sumendra.
unmuted. Miriam, he's asking to be unmuted.
Susanna, Francine, can you help? Ele disse que não está conseguindo falar, que o microfone está trancado. Sumendra, can you talk now? No, it's... Can you help? Pode ajudar, Fran? Por que será que está desligado dele? Só ele pode ligar? Sumendra, can you try to open your microphone?
I think he's not able to.
Well, yes, I am
unmute.
asking for Francine, who is helping us in the... Francine, tem algum problema que ele não está conseguindo abrir o microfone?
Ele precisa aceitar a solicitação, é problema no seu equipamento.
Felipe, ajuda.
Professor, you have to accept to be unmuted. I am muted by host. Let's see. A few technological, please be patient, everybody. Oh.
Maybe if you enter and go away and enter again in the meeting, Sumendra, maybe it is one possibility, I don't know. Aceitar onde?
He's back. He's
Fran?
back.
Hello, everybody. Good
Oh.
morning.
Good morning. Okay, great.
Good morning. Yes. I'm so sorry. There was some technical glitch. I was
So-
unable to connect. Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, Felipe. Thank you, all my friends from Brazil and from rest of the world. I'm so happy to be connected with all of you, and especially this post-event organized by your commission. The newly established commission is doing so well. Now, I have prepared a small presentation for those who could not attend the Congress. This was the 19th IUAES World Anthropology Congress, mainly focusing on marginalities, uncertainties, and world anthropologies, enlivening the past and envisioning the future. This was supported by Wennergren Foundation, Government of India, Culture Department, Anthropological Survey of India, and University of Delhi. May I go to the next slide, please? Now, we had a gala inauguration. It was addressed by our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Yogesh Singh, and the President, the then President, Junji Koizumi. And we had a galaxy of stars, and it was in the Vice Regal Lodge, where the capital of India was located in 1911. This was the place where Viceroy of India used to have its own meetings and private parties. So very majestic building, all our delegates enjoyed. Next slide, please. We had 37 panels, 3 keynote speakers, 16 sister panels. यहीं रोक दो साइड यार. 3 keynote speakers, 16 sister panels, 18 round tables, 8 workshops, 3 plenary speakers with 3 plenary sessions with 9 speakers, and 1,159 papers, 20 ethnographic films, and special panel on museum. We also had exhibition on sacred groves and glorious Bhimbhetka, the cave painting. Next slide, please. None other than Professor Marilyn Stratton delivered the keynote address online, followed with Professor R.K. Jain, who delivered the second keynote, and finally, in the valedictory, Professor Ravindra Khare delivered the keynote online. Next slide, please. We see 3 important, no, go back to the previous slide. We have 3 important plenaries on 3 important themes. The first theme was, how can the World Anthropological Union contribute to the UNESCO Bridges Coalition in developing humanities-led sustainability science? This is a new area of UNESCO Bridge collaboration with World Anthropology Union, and we are still following it up to bring it to a logical end. The second plenary was on pandemic, its history, politics, and culture. The third pandemic was caste, tribe. The third plenary was on caste, tribe, gender perspectives from world anthropologies. And we have a gala dinner followed with cultural evenings. Next slide, please. Next, we have cultural evenings pertaining to Odissi dance, the dance of Odisha, the Eastern India, pertaining to Kathak, the North Indian dance, pertaining to the Indian classical instrumental traditions, bamboo dance from Northeast, Bihu from Assam, and we have tremendous support from Government of Assam and Culture Council, University of Delhi. We also organized under the G20 program, we organized a collaborative event, Brazilian artist and Indian artist, Japanese artist and Indian artist together, some evenings, fantastic evenings. And finally, the last slide, next slide, please. These were the G20 countries. The last slide is, to sum up, before the Congress, we had two pre-Congress events, one at University of Lucknow, and the second one at Guru Gobind Singh, Indraprastha University. The University of Lucknow, the keynote was given there by none other than Heather O'Leary, and Guru Gobind Singh, it was given by Ariel Aheron, the Nomadic Commission's chair. We also had three post-Congress, Digital Culture and Anthropology by University of Hyderabad, Colonial and Post-Colonial Way of Knowledge Production at Asiatic Society, 27-28th of October, and finally, Anthropology for World Peace by Nalanda University in the first week of November, which was the last event. But currently, we are working on the publication plan of it, and I'm thankful to all my friends, especially Miriam, who delivered a plenary lecture, fantastic plenary lecture. People still remember. Also, Helen gave beautiful plenary, and I'm so thankful to them to have accepted our invitation at the final moment. Thank you, Felipe, for giving me this chance to introduce. And thank you, Heather, for standing by us always, and all my close friends from Brazil. Looking forward to meeting you in South Africa. Thank you.
Professor Sumendra Patnaik, thank you very much for this presentation. All of you who are in Delhi, seeing all these pictures, we have nostalgia about these great days that we stayed in India. Thank you very much for all your hospitality there. It was really a wonderful Congress. We are going to present now Martha Patricia, that we name Patricia, Patti, and me. Rapidly, some things about our commission, what we are thinking about the commission. Can we pass the slides, please, Susanna?
Okay, we are ready.
Yes.
Good day for everybody. And the next, please. The next.
Patricia, I will only present the next two slides about what happened in India, and after you can present about our proposal. Can you present the next slide, please, Susanna? Yes, it's really cool to complete what Sumendra passed about all these numbers. To say our commission, we had 8 presential panels, 2 virtual panels, 1 virtual roundtables, and it was 95 papers. And you had 1 presential meeting of the commission. In the next slide, please, these are the titles of the 8 presential panels that we had in Delhi. And we will have today people who present in most of these panels, presenting what they present there, and only to know a little of all these, very different subjects and approaches that we had in India about gender, feminism, queer theory, and all the things that we work in our commission. Patricia, then I pass for you.
Thank you. I emphasize the main topics about our commission. First, which is our objective, that is establish a strong and cohesive network among Commission members. We want to be linked all the time. Our proposals are to hold 2 meetings annually, one in person and one virtually, and for the 2024, one virtual meeting in June, and participation in the WAU Congress in South Africa in November of the next year. And of course, to incorporate new members. But it is important for us to remember that there are requirements for the membership and continued participation in this commission. And these requirements are attendance and at meetings of IUAES, WAU, and the commission itself, and to be affiliated with UIAs. The next, please. Now we are working to reinforce our communication through our webpage, WhatsApp, and email account, an account by Gmail, to elaborate the regulations of the Commission, to work on a possible publication with the state of the art on feminist anthropology in the different countries represented in this group. And we hope you will be interested in this topic, and to share relevant information on the topics of global feminisms and queer politics. The next, please. As I was fast as I can, and we want to emphasize the relevance of an active participation of all the members of the Commission and in maintained communication through our social media. And this meeting is one of these efforts to be in touch, to know what we are working on, and to interchange opinions, information, etc. So welcome, and thanks to the team of the UFSC that is working with this proposal. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Patricia, this presentation, what we are, well, all of that Patricia presents. We need your participation, a great communication, and well, we hope we will have the next 4 years in our commission with a lot of meetings and, well, contacts and transformation of our field of research. Well, we will have now a lecture from our Professor Nilika Mehrotra, but and after we will have 2 sessions to present and discuss some of the 95 papers that were presented in Delhi. Then now I will pass the word for Professor Nilika. Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh,
Yes.
great. Then thank you very much to be with us. And we ask Professor Nilika to present us the great lecture that she did in the POSE event in Calcutta about feminist anthropology in India, because most, Felipe, Heather, and me, we were there, but other people who were in India did not listen your big, very interesting conference, a lecture. Then please, we want to listen to you again now with more people for our commission. Thank you very much to be here, Nilika.
Thank you very much, Miriam and Felipe. I'm really honored that you have chosen me to speak in this virtual seminar. When you say that, I should say what I did in Calcutta, it's slightly difficult because I don't remember, the kind of things that I said, but definitely I'll try to re-articulate, my views on feminist anthropology in India. How much time do I have?
You have 20 minutes if you want.
Okay, okay, fine. So, when we talk about feminist anthropology in India, I'm trying to ask some questions about, how do we define feminist anthropology, especially in the Indian context? Are we talking about anthropology of feminism, or we are talking about feminist anthropologist, or we are talking about feminist issues that is largely about women's issues? So what I'm trying to do here is to actually talk about all the three, with the three main themes around which feminist anthropology in Indian context actually revolves. Three or four, rather, four themes. The one most important theme is about women's political participation, women's role in the public life, which is something till a few decades back not as evident as we see today. The second theme is about domesticity, the notion of domesticity, the notion that women's role are limited to the family, and family is often seen as the most important institution in this part of the world. So the question of work and family, and the most important question about family and violence. So domestic violence is one major issue that is something that feminists have been working around with. The third question is about third theme is about legality. The question of courts, the question of political institutions, how around the political institutions the laws have been made in favor of women, and also the fact that the feminist movement and feminist studies have played a very important role in creating an environment where women-friendly laws could come in. The fourth theme is about gender fluidities, the question of gender fluid identities and intersectionality. So, when we are talking about Indian context, we are dealing with a society which is extremely diverse, heterogeneous, and very, very plural in terms of religion, ethnicity, also race to some extent in Northeast, and caste, class. Caste is a very, very important element of organizing principle of Indian society. So caste, class are very important themes. Then urban and rural. So there are, we are dealing with a context which is extremely complex and extremely hierarchical. So, where inequalities, not only in economic terms, but inequalities in terms of the factors that I have just mentioned are persistent, and they have been persistent for centuries together. In addition to that, I think one of the most important element in looking at the history of feminism in Indian context has been colonialism. So India has been a colonized, society, and it got freed in 1947. It got freedom, and there is so we have a 1947 as the benchmark. We talk about pre-independence and post-independence. So we are, looking at a society which is which has the repercussions of colonialism, and we are dealing with issues that are, one of the products of colonial structures and institutions, and many of these structures and institutions are still persisting. So within this context, when we talk about sociology and anthropology and the question of feminism, when did feminism come in, and how did the question of gender inequality actually come in? So many scholars have actually taken the question back to, especially historians look at 19th century reform movements as one of the first ways in which the women's question was being raised in opposition to, as a response to British colonialist attempts to articulate the question of women in terms of extreme oppression. So, we had a custom called sati, and sati was about, burning of the widow on the pyre of the, deceased husband. So this was one of the very, very important issue which was raised during the 19th century by social reformers, Indian social reformers, and British, colonial authority actually took that as a marker of the backwardness of the Indian, populace. So I think 19th century is the period when, issues like this, women's education was another issue. Widow remarriage was one of the important issues. There were also customs among the so-called upper caste where women were not allowed to be educated, along with the so-called lower caste. So women and lower castes were prohibited from education. So 19th century is about, social reform movements, and male reformers were the ones who actually started some of these movements, and later to be joined by their spouses, and who have been also extremely important reformers. So one of the prominent sociologists of India, Neera Desai, actually was one of the first ones who actually documented these narratives, along with many American and British, anthropologists, about the first phase of the women's movement in the Indian context. But the second phase of the women's movement actually comes as following the West feminist movements in the global North, and it is 60s and early 70s when the question of women's role in public life came in a full form. So in the first wave of women's movement, also political participation and women's entry into the public life was a very important issue through women's education, as well as many other, their participation in the independence movement at the initiative of Mahatma Gandhi. But in second phase of women's movement, I think what the difference which was made was the rise of women's studies. Women's studies as a byproduct of women's movement in the Indian context. So 70s is the period when a lot of women's organizations came around, and they started to actually question, especially the domestic role of women and the kind of oppression which came with that. So I think they attacked the institution of marriage, especially through the question of dowry. Dowry is the gifts that are paid at the time of marriage from bride side to the groom side, and usually it is unidirectional, exchange of gifts. So, and a lot of women were battered for demands of dowry during that time. So dowry abuse was a very important issue in the 70s. And the second issue was sexual violence. Sexual violence, especially custodial violence of women. And, we have seen how anthropologists have often, focused a lot on the tribal or the indigenous community. And one of these cases, Mathura rape case, was, this Mathura was a tribal girl who was raped by the gang rape, and in the final judgment, it was said that she was tribal and she was used to sexual affairs, and so rape can't be proved. So this was one of the triggers for the women's movement in the Indian context. And it also gave rise to Indian Association of Women's Studies as a discipline, as a department, started to be opened in different universities. But I must take you back to what was happening in anthropology. And as I said, that early anthropology in India was obsessed with the idea of studying the so-called tribal communities or indigenous communities. And except a few male anthropologists like Verrier Elvin, there was very little mention of the gender issues in these ethnographies. And there were two very prominent anthropologists, Iravati Karve, who is often seen as the first feminist anthropologist who wrote excellent volume on kinship organization in India, and brought in used the feminist lens to look at how kinship systems vary between North and South India. And they you see the gender equations diverse because of the nature of the kinship system. And this was also followed by another very prominent anthropologist, Leela Dubey, who also did excellent exploration of women and kinship and family systems in South and Southeast Asia. And she tried to look at different kinship models, and she utilized the gender lens to actually look at the implications of the nature of kinship on gender equations. So these two anthropologists, women anthropologists, have been extremely influential in informing the nature of Indian anthropology in the contemporary times. There is another. I'll write down the names. Yes, Leela Dubey and Iravati Karve. Iravati Karve was an anthropologist in 60s, and Leela Dubey wrote much in the 80s. And Leela Dubey was also one of the first chair of the Commission on Women in IUAES. And, under her chairpersonship, actually, a lot of volumes were published. So I also talked about Neera Desai. Neera Desai was a very important sociologist who was connected with trade union movements and women's movements. And her her actually anthropology and sociology came through lived experience as an activist and as a scholar. So, these three were very important. I would also like to talk about another important sociologist, C. Parvatamma. I'll just write down. I can't find. Yeah. C. Parvatamma, who was a Dalit. Dalit means, people who are from the lower caste. And, she was one of the most engaged sociologists. She did not write as much on gender as on caste. And today, caste and gender is one of the most important themes in Indian anthropology. And this was C. Parvatamma's work actually, brought in the question of caste through the writings of Ambedkar. Ambedkar in Indian sociology. She wrote about several scheduled castes that are ex-untouchables, and her own autobiography also kind of documents her rise from a very poor Dalit family to elite professor. And this is reminiscent of black feminists. And a lot of studies on caste and gender are actually they have taken following Parvatamma and another anthropologist, Sharmila Rege's work, who's extremely perceptive about the relationship between intersectionality between caste and gender. The third point is about, as I said, in most of these studies, you also find, how caste impinges, how violence is normalized in, caste, and what is the implication of caste on women's sexuality, their mobility and autonomy. So a lot of anthropologists have actually focused on tribal and caste communities to look at these questions, and they challenged male social anthropologists, accounts, because they they did not take gender into consideration. Yes, okay. So, yeah, I'll try to wind up. So, I will not talk much about the legalities, but women's studies and women's movement actually, brought in, were able to actually put pressure on the government, and they brought in several changes in the Dowry Act, Domestic Violence Act, and several other, especially sexual rape act, and there are acts on sexual harassment at workplaces also. So, and they have been documented. The last point I want to talk about is that how in the last 2 decades, there has been more focus on the so-called third gender or the transgender, the question of queer sexualities or gender diverse identity is something, along with masculinities, is something that a lot of feminist anthropologists are, studying in the Indian context, both male and female, and also transgender people. So we find that, women's studies or gender studies has opened a great deal in the recent times, and they are looking at the political, social and economic context, as well as sexuality and identity question on the other hand, and which is making feminist anthropology in India ethnographically and theoretically very rich. So with this, I think I should stop here. I don't have time, but I'll be very happy if there are comments and questions. Thank you.
Professor Nilika, thank you very much. It was so great information, a lot of information about what happened in India, and we have a lot of questions, but we will continue in the first session. And after the first session, if people want to do questions for Professor Nelika, and so then we can discuss together. Okay, then we will continue to the first section, and I will organize our first discussion. Professor Subhada Shana will not come, but we have here Professor Marisa Ruiz from Mexico, who gently accept to discuss this first section. Welcome to our here, Marisa, and well, I will pass immediately to greet Christine Kölsch. He's a colleague from Argentina, and I saw in the social media that now she has the nationality of Argentinian nationality because she came from Europe, from Latin America, and she will talk about her paper, wonderful paper that we saw in India, Dancing Their Visions, Following Their Worlds, Family Artist Ethnographers Challenge the Anthropology Canon in 20th Century. Grit, you can talk.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me here, for the invitation to present again after our excellent session in Delhi. So I will just start to have my 5 minutes. Yes, my research I present is about 5 women who contributed to the field of anthropology in the mid-20th century, especially to the subdiscipline anthropology of dance. It's about the African-American artist anthropologists Catherine Dunham, Pearl Primus, and Zora Neale Hurston, the Jewish-Ukrainian experimental filmmaker Maya Deren, and the American dancer and dance therapist Francisca Boas. Even if not all of them had formal anthropological training, they stood out for their creative achievements and theoretical approaches to accomplish the intersection between cultures, dance, education, social justice, and racial equality. Please go back to the first one. Very shortly to mention, Zora Neale Hurston, for example, was the first Black woman to graduate from Barnard College in anthropology under tuition of Franz Boas. Catherine Dunham holds a master in anthropology trained by Melville Hatzkowitz in Chicago, and Pearl Primus has a PhD in anthropology from NYU. Francisca Boas was trained by her father, and Maya Deren learned from Catherine Dunham and did excellent fieldwork in Haiti. My principal question is, why are these women not recognized in the discipline? And why do they not appear in most anthropological books?
Please, can you read really slowly, please?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but maybe you can go back.
Sorry, because it's very quickly, and maybe some people are not understanding.
Yes, please. Can you go back to the previous slide so that you can see the pictures of these women? Thank you. So, as I shortly mentioned, that you get familiar who are these women. So my principal question is, why are these women not recognized in the discipline, and why do they almost not appear in most anthropological books, and not appear as serious anthropologists in the subdiscipline anthropology of dance? So now please to the next slide. My methodological procedure was doing archival research, bibliographic research. I applied bodily practice as a research tool. I took lessons on Dunham technique with Nat Williams Jr. in New York, a disciple of Catherine Dunham, and I do performance outdoor ethnography. So what were their contributions to anthropology? As a result of my analysis, all of them anticipated key concepts of postmodern anthropology, embodiment, reflexivity, outdoor ethnography, which includes that they developed diverse narrative forms beyond what is called objective ethnography. They applied humanist ethics and aesthetics. They recognized the ethnographer is also a subject, therefore, as other social actors and participants can be considered as textual and kinetic ethnographic bodies. I would like to point out that, for example, visual methods and techniques to reveal ethnographic data were very important to them. And they also try to disseminate anthropological research beyond academy so that other social actors and people can get access to anthropological fieldwork and knowledge. For example, Soranil Hurston and Catherine Dunham developed inclusive educational programs, and Francisca Boas was a pioneer in dance therapy. Maya Deren, for example, emphasizes the importance of the human body as a transmitter of cultural and embodied knowledge. However, she's never mentioned in the context of the concept of embodiment. Always the merits go to Thomas Jordan. To sum up, so female pioneers in anthropology. May you go to the next slide? So they were female pioneers in anthropology who stood out for developing diverse fieldwork methodologies and self-reflexive approaches. They provided important contributions to dance anthropology, and they also understood dance as transformative force beyond muscular and gravitational limitations. Furthermore, there's also an issue of keeping memory, as in the case of Soranil Hurston, buried in an unmarked grave in Fort Pierce in Florida. And when Alice Walker found that out, her initiative was to set up a memorial board, and she also wrote, citing, "Only after Soranil Hurston, died penniless, still laboring at her craft, still immersed in her work, still following her vision and her road, did it begin to seem to some that yes, perhaps this woman was a serious artist after all, since artists are known to live poor and die broke. But you are up against a hard game if you have to die to win it, and we must insist that dying in poverty is an unacceptable extreme." End of citation. In order to conclude, there is also a personal issue. These women gave me strength in difficult moments in my career when I had doubts about having chosen the right discipline, when I was criticized or ignored for sometimes not doing mainstream anthropology, when I felt misunderstood. Reading their work, watching their dance, it took me to recognize my embodied knowledge, which was an impulse to continue and following my road, inspired by these female pioneer anthropologists who provided me with their knowledge, and are women who reflect me. And partly to answer my initial question, our discipline has still a problem with alternative and art-based methods, especially transdisciplinary approaches, but also recognizing diverse feminisms and different femininities, which makes it even more difficult for scholars descending from working class families with diverse ethnic and racial backgrounds and working from the margins and marginal academic subaltern spaces. Thank you for listening, and I will paste in the chat section, for example, one of my performance pieces, or what I do as experiments for my research, a piece entitled "Human and Non-Human Dancing Bodies," where I explore my own capacities of movement and my own bodily knowledge. Thank you very much.
Christine, thank you very much. And it's very interesting, the performance that Christine have. Please, you can see she will send us the link for the film, and I really appreciate a lot your presentation in Delhi and now here. You have very interesting questions for feminist anthropology. Thank you very much. Then I will pass now the floor for Nimisha John for India, who will talk about decolonizing the gender categories, insights from transgender people in Kerala. Are you here, Nimisha?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
Great.
I'm here. So I have a poor internet connection, so I am turning off my camera.
We are not listening you anymore.
So
Okay.
I'm sharing my screen.
Okay,
I hope
great.
it is visible.
Yes, it's great.
Yeah. So hello everyone. Give me a second. So hello everyone. My paper is titled as "Decolonizing the Gendered Categories: Insights from Transgender People in Kerala." So this paper is an outcome of a self-reflexive ethnographic fieldwork with transgender people in Kerala, a southern state in India. Parivar is a familial unit headed by a transgender woman that consists of extensive kinship relations where people are adopted to the Parivar through a ceremony called wreath. So in this paper, I am mapping my transition as a cisgender heterosexual researcher from an OG, original my interlocutors say, to a transgender through a 9-month fieldwork in Kerala in 2021. The paper is an attempt to move away from universal homogeneous discourses to local, contextually specific identity narratives. I explored the categories OG, Naran, cisgender women, TG, and the broad category of women as emerged through my fieldwork. So my interlocutors simultaneously ascribe these categories to me as a researcher, as well as they use these categories to self-identify also. So for instance, these are some of the ethnographic vignettes that emerged in my fieldwork. For instance, if you can see in the first instance, where they were collectively identifying me as a woman. They were saying we are all women. You know, the sameness was emerging that time. There are my interlocutors who identified themselves as a women. They were, asserting that I am also a woman. So at the same time, there were also moments when my interlocutors clearly indicated my difference, saying that, is this an OG? So I asked, what does this OG mean? I thought this is another gender. They clearly specified it means OG means original. But this was not just an attributed category. There are my interlocutors who claimed themselves as an OG. So I have this interlocutor, Leia, who was working in a semi-government sector. She was a permanent employee there. And she was living with her partner. As she says, I am living with my partner as husband and wife in a residential apartment. She was my only interlocutor who claimed herself as an OG. And in my analysis, I found out that OG is a gender identity that has something to do with other social access as well. Her class position, her marital status, all this contributed to her claiming as an OG, claiming herself as an OG that enabled her to claim that in that way. And in other instances, when I'm around, my interlocutors used to say that, don't say that things now, Naran is here. Don't say these things in front of the Naran. Naran means cisgender woman. But again, this was not just a category for me. This was a category for my interlocutors as well. They used to identify themselves as a Naran or a cisgender woman. So in that sense, Naran is also a category which is idealistic and aspirational. Again, at the end of my fieldwork, at the end of my 9-month fieldwork, my interlocutors started to identify me as a transgender. And this was one of the reasons that they gave. You are always roaming around with us, so you also become a transgender. So there is this transition from an OG to a TG that happened in my fieldwork. So these ethnographic vignettes clearly shows that the concept of identity is a relational one and is also a sociocultural phenomenon, emerges and circulates in local discourse context of interactions. Due to time constraints, I couldn't really elaborate on the context that actually lead to these categories. But again, OG or original, it is an ascribed category. When it is attributed to me or when it is ascribed to me, it reflects the ideologies of female domesticity. While it becomes a claim category, it brings forth the role of social access in constituting gender identity. Naran is used as a reference point for the researcher and for the interlocutors, which is inextricably tailored to the perceptions of cisgender femininity. And at the end, transgender emerges as a category as an outcome of socialization emerged through the kinship relations in the Parivar. My participants used to identify me as a transgender because I was actively involved in the kin-making practices that was happening in the Parivar. I was always present for all the family functions and most of them considered me as a sister or a daughter to me. So through that process, I was also being identified as a transgender at the end of my fieldwork. So these ethnographic vignettes I presented in a sequential order. These various points of references such as woman, OG, Naran, and TG, and the values attached to it explicates the importance of eliciting local vernacular categories. These various identifications explicate the contingency of identity categories as well as underscores gender as a property of transactions. Thank you so much.
Nimisha, thank you very much. Wonderful presentation, and we learn a lot about these native categories that are using in Kerala. Thank you very much. We will discuss after, and now we will pass the video that we receive from our colleagues Wim Kassen from Egypt and Katarzyna Kosmala for Poland. The name is Challenging Persisting Inequalities and Marginal Voices. Can we pass the video, Susanna, please?
Hello, my name is Reem Qasim. I'm presenting today the case study Cultural Engagement in the Context of Crisis, Resilience Building through Hybrid Cultural Engagement in Disadvantaged Communities in Egypt, together with Professor Katarzyna Kosmala. We are both feminist researchers engaged in interdisciplinary explorations of gender equality, particularly within developing contexts, which are characterized by socioeconomic challenges and working across geographical peripheries in the fields of arts and culture. With a dedicated focus on empowering women through transformative practices, our research aims at shedding light on systemic inequalities while actively seeking creative solutions that address these inequalities. This case study aims at examining how hybrid formats of arts and cultural engagement can help disadvantaged communities in Egypt develop resilience and emerge stronger from crisis. It was designed to deliver 4 weeks green crafts recycling workshops at 3 care shelters in Alexandria, Egypt. The workshops adapted a virtual cultural facilitation methodology structured around non-formal education techniques, and the participants are young women aged between 18 and 25 years, residents of 3 care shelters in Alexandria. The research design adapted a hybrid participatory action research approach as a qualitative research methodology and contributes to method innovation, utilizing 3 main tools: pedagogical, which is the non-formal education; the digital, which is a novel virtual platform, basita.live, developed as a response to COVID-19 pandemic; and the creative, which is the crafts workshops. The project was designed specifically to develop the 3 adaptive outcomes of resilience identified by Zautra and Reich, which are recovery, sustainability, and growth. There are many shared characteristics between non-formal education and PAR that were employed in this research. I will only mention the most important one for time constraints. Both encourage a participatory learning system and, most importantly, co-creation, where the young girls participated actively and influenced in this process. These characteristics were also employed carefully to achieve the 3 adaptive outcomes of resilience, where, for example, we enabled discussions among the participants, facilitated the work in pairs, small groups and bigger groups. We gave the participants the chance to act as trainers, facilitators, and assist each other. We allowed them also to change and influence the creative process in terms of design and content. To measure their resilience outcomes, we adapted 2-layer scales. The first one, which is considering resilience as a dynamic process, we adapted the Zautra and Reich adaptive outcomes of resilience. And the second one, the 10-item Connor-Davidson resilience scale, which was adapted to the language of the study participants, measuring resilience as a trait, not as a dynamic process. The workshops demonstrated effectiveness in attaining those 3 adaptive outcomes outlined by Zautra and Reich. We conclude that engaging in creative activities through co-creation utilizing virtual cultural platforms can facilitate skills development that boost self-esteem and confidence, creating dynamics that in this study supported those young women in enhancing their own resilience, building in the face of personal skills. By adapting the dynamic perspectives, we recognize that resilience is not a fixed but an ongoing process of adaptation and growth evident in this study. We have emphasized growth as a critical in resilience building process where individuals expand their perspectives, foster intercultural competences, and develop a broader repertoire of adaptive skills. And this continuous growth nurtures resilience and enables individuals to navigate challenges with increased flexibility, creativity, and confidence, and can contribute to the development of coping patterns with adversity that may be perceived as traits. The hybrid approach for cultural engagement proved beneficial for those young women living in those sheltered accommodations, experiencing multiple challenges already before the pandemic associated with limited mobility, social isolation, and financial constraints. It also offered flexibility, enabling tailoring this content to meet their specific requirements and preferences, thus allowing them to engage in crafts making in their own terms. And most importantly, the workshop served as a nurturing environment where the young women were empowered, felt valued, respected, and most of all, they were heard. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Wim and Katarzyna. I don't know if you are here in the room, but it's very interesting, your presentation about, we think that the craft is something that women do in all parts of the world, and it's really very interesting, the work that you did, these workshops, and we can discuss in the continuity. But now I will pass for Sumit Surab Sivastara. Excuse me, Sumit, are you here?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Can you pronounce your name, please?
It's a long name.
Oh, please, but you know, you can the next time say correctly your name. Excuse me for don't know how to pronounce.
It's Sumit Saurabh Srivastava.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Is my screen visible?
Yes, is visible.
Okay, fine. Just I will simply go to what I will be discussing on is women and work, psychosocial distress. The title of my paper is to interlink gender, work, and leisure during the times of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, there are three variables which we have to take, which I took into consideration, which were gender, work, and leisure during COVID-19 pandemic. And at the outset, I would like to state that this paper is based on largely European literature-based paper. And when I say Eurocentric literature of gender, leisure, and work, what I mean to say is, if it is visible, this book says Korean leisure, which means that each and every region across the globe have their own set of practices and activities which can be labeled as leisure activities. Now, the point which is important, if I go to the next one, when we look into what do we mean by leisure, we arrive at an understanding that most of the time it emerges as an antithesis of work. So for work, we have something called we get paid for work, whereas in the leisure activities, we see that whenever we have quote unquote free time, we engage into certain activities which come under leisure activities. Moving ahead, if we look into how gender has something to add with what do we mean by leisure activities, we come into what Professor Nilika ma'am just now elaborated upon, the arena of domesticity. And when we enter into the arena of domesticity, what we find is that women largely, when we focus on South Asian context, women largely are confined to domestic works, household activities. And herein what happens is that within the confinement of quote unquote her personal, private, domestic life, she engages into certain activities which may not be termed as leisure, but then there is a continuous interaction between those two spheres of activities. And if we try to contextualize how gender, COVID, and leisure activities have interacted with each other during the last 2-3 years, we arrive at certain set of empirical studies which have underlined to a major extent that how, because of work at home, stay at home, and lockdown, what had happened that women who were already into their quote unquote, what we can say, domestic life activities, they were also having problems, or they were also being faced with something called their professional lives. So hypothetically speaking, if a woman is into a professional life, and again, because of the lockdown and work at home, she also has to take care of quote unquote her care economy, what happens is that she does not have more time at hand to go for leisure activities. Herein, what we can again go back and look into these three terminologies which are very important. The first one is second shift. The second is the unleisured majority, focusing on women. The third is leisure time deprivation, and subsequently we have something called time crunch. Now, all these four terminologies specifically refer to women who, on one hand, had to have to engage with her professional lives as well as the domesticity. When we move into some of the empirical works which exclusively looked into gender and leisure during COVID-19, we find that certain set of studies have highlighted the way women were more burdened with activities in comparison to men. And this is something which I thought of bringing in. And here in this figure, if we see that if we look at the blue side is the men, and the other one is women. Now, what we see is across different indicators and variables which relate to psychosocial, mental stress, or the state of mind, what we see is that how leisure activities get influenced. Now, we see that at the women's side, we see all the variables are touching the percentages of 4, whereas among the men, it is somewhere around 3, 3.29, some and others. Now, if you move into the other one, this study specifically looks into how the Indian context. And here we see that if we look into the blue one, which is around 5 hours up to 5 and 6, and if we look at the other one, the square one, which pertains to the male, we see that how the housework hours, which I was just referring to, that if one has to balance both the professional activities as well as the household activities, how these two have a different impact. To conclude, what we found during the review of this literature is that definitely COVID-19 had an unprecedented impact on our day-to-day lives, but at the same time, the impacts of COVID-19 have to be looked into through the lens of gender activities. And when we bring into the notion of leisure, things become a little bit problematic. Why? Because when we look into the leisure activities, what happens is it is closely tied with the notion of work. And when we talk about work, we arrive at a certain understanding that when we talk about work, it has to be paid. The work has to be paid. Now, what happens is during the in the process of performing activities within the quote unquote her domestic life or domesticity affairs, what happens is that women have been performing and still are performing a huge set of tasks or activities which do not come under the conventional economic understanding of work. And if we have to interlink it with something called stay at home, work at home, and lockdown, what happened was that whatever little time women had to go for their leisure activities could not be taken care of. So what happens at the end of the day, which I thought of concluding is is that owing to the burden of domestic activities on one hand, and owing to the responsibilities which she has to fulfill due to her professional lives, what happened at the end of the day that women had very little time for leisure activities. And in relation with the same, we arrive at those four terminologies when we talked about time crunch and lack of leisure activities pertaining to women, and it subsequently somewhere down the line also have a serious implications on their mental health. Thank you. Rest of the slides are, I think, references which may be looked into later on. Thank you.
Professor Sumit, thank you very much. It's really very interesting because you are looking for your data, and we can compare what happened in Brazil, in other parts of the world with COVID, and the feelings that women and men had in this moment. Really, thank you very much. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Now I will pass the word for, for Saptarshi Baraji. Are you here?
Yes. Am I audible?
Oh,
okay.
Nice to meet you here, Saptarshi.
Yeah, nice to meet with you all. Like after a long time, like it's nostalgic. Okay. So, may I share my presentation?
Please, Saptarshi, do you have the right? Oh, yes.
Yeah, is it visible completely? I hope it is visible. Just give me 1 minute. Well, the topic which I have presented during World Anthropology IUS World Anthropology Congress in Delhi University, it was talking about the emergence of subaltern queer anthropology and the death of Anglophonic colonial academia, an ethnographic discussion on Koti, Hijra, and Duranis of West Bengal. So the unfolding of subaltern queer identities become a fundamental critique towards the Anglophonic understanding of gender and sexuality. This paper I have tried to describe and discuss different dimensions of intersection subaltern queer identities of Bengal within the trans queer feminist ethnography to decolonize queer anthropological academia with the subaltern queer gaze. In 1990s, the term queer gained new acceptance within the post-structuralist and post-modernist thought that was an attempt to move away from reproducing the heterosexist binary of heterosexuals and homosexuals, which is basically heteronormativity and homonormativity. The struggle of queers started to be visible in India back in 1999 with the Kolkata Friendship Walk, which is the oldest friendship walk in India, primarily to oppose the heteropatriarchy. Later, with the emergence of queer theory, queer activists and academicians started to critique Eurocentric academic construction of third gender identity in the space of academia and activism. Furthermore, the emergence of more subaltern queer ethnography and decolonization of academia has opposed the Western Anglophonic understanding of gender and sexuality by uncovering subaltern queer identity existence such as Hijras, Kotis, Dhuranis, and many more identities. The entire subaltern queer scholarship critiqued and enhanced the framework of transnational trans queer studies. Looking at the South Asia, apart from the patriarchy, the society and the culture are having caste as their own and more unique oppressive system. In contemporary India, religious fundamentalism and dogmatic casteism made the queer space more intersectional by demolishing the marginalized queer voices and existence, such as Dalit, Adivashi, Bahujan queer voices. In India, the judgment of Supreme Court in 2018, which moved the IPC or Indian Penal Code 377 and decriminalized homosexuality, gives freedom of existence and expression of identity to the LGBTQ plus people constitutionally, and opened a forum to fight marriage equality and other fundamental rights. So further focused, in my work, I have followed the methodology of experiential ethnography and participant observation to explore the diverse subaltern queer identities, mainly focusing on the Koti, Hijra, and Dhuranis. First question, who are the Kotis, or who are the Hijras, or who are the Dhuranis? These are the subaltern identities which are not the mainstream, or which is completely queer in notion. There from the history, from the past to present and to future, as well in this notion of South Asian histories, which challenge the binary construction of gender identities such as man or women. When we are talking about Koti, most of the feminine or effeminate section of males or men who are also identifying also as trans women or trans feminine person, they are calling themselves as Koti. Now, the diverseness of the Koti identity cannot be judged from the angle of gender and sexuality only, because these identities such as Koti, Hijra, Dhuranis, these are not just a sexual or gender identity. This is a huge non-normative cultures which are having more complexities. Now, looking at the Hijra identities, the Hijra identities mainly referring the Guru Chela system and the people of queer community who are not in the mainstream sections of culture, and historically is there in the Indian society. And they're having the unique familial support or system, which is called Guru Chela system, and along with their unique kinship system, where we can see the topmost person is called as Nayak. Under a Nayak, there is a Naika, and under the Naika, there is Gurus or Gurumas, and under the Gurumas, there is Pradhancheli or Dudbeti. Under there is Nati Chela, Prati Chela. It is following the traditional Indian family or Indian kinship system, and they're also having the occupation roles such as Badhai, Challa, Khajra. So Badhai is basically the traditional occupation where the trans queer feminine people or the hijras are doing the begging, going door to door and giving worship or giving blessings to the people and then getting money. On the other hand, challas are basically traditional occupation of their where they are doing the beggings in the streets, in the trains. And then the khajra is basically referring to the sex work. And with this traditional non-normative occupation, which is also following their survival mode of economy, this is just not an occupation. This is following also another section of hierarchical system in between the Hijra community, which is called different gharanas. In Bengal, I have found basically three gharanas, which is Shambajari, then Machua Gharana, and Ghum Gharana. Now, talking about Hijra and Koti, then there is two fundamental notions, cultural notion I need to highlight, that is Ulti, the queer language of Bengal. Every queer community, they are having their own secret language to communicate with each other, which is not being understandable by the mainstream communities. So similarly in Bengal, we are having the Ulti language, which is basically the language of the Koti and Hijra community. And then another notion of their integral part of their culture, which is called tikri or clappings. Clappings or tikri is just not only an act, it is also a non-verbal communication. It is also an assertion of their identity or reclaiming their own spaces. Now, moving towards the intersectionality, the Koti or Hijra, Dhurani, these identities are very much intersectional with the amalgamation of class, caste, religion, and ethnicity. Because looking at the Hijras from the religious aspect, we can see both the people from the Hindus or the Muslims and other religious community are being the part of the Hijra community, and they're calling themselves as Arabani, Kinnar, Hijras, Khojasira, etc., etc. When I have done my fieldwork, I have noticed an important notion in the Hijra community where when they're passing greetings to each other, they're saying Jai Sri Krishna and Khuda Hafiz, both together. This is showing the pluralism and the secularism, the Indian notion, and the fluid notion of religion. And then,
and please, conclusion, your conclusion.
Okay, just give me 1 minute, just one slide. Okay, Looking at the mythological context and the history, hijras or kotis we can find it from the time of Sultanate or Mughal, and in the Hindu mythologies as well, such as Kama Sutras and temple architectures, even the Manusmriti as well. And this conclusion furthermore evolving with the queer academics and the more subaltern queer people are coming in the academic spaces, and they are reclaiming the space and trying to provide the trans queer feminist aspects in the anthropological notion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful slides, and it's very interesting your presentation and all the critics of the Western way to think about gender and sexuality. Thank you very much, Saptarshi. Then I will pass for Felipe Fernandes, who will be the last for this session. Please, Felipe, 5 minutes, please.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm going to present what I presented in New Delhi, Indigenous Students in Higher Education in Bahia, Brazil, promoting inclusive and culturally sensitive approaches through the life and contributions of Josefa Ferreira Patachó. Recently, there has been increasing recognition of the need for inclusive and culturally sensitive education for Indigenous people in higher education. It was just recently that Indigenous populations started to claim their right to higher education in Brazil. After the proclamation of the Brazilian Constitution in 1988, Indigenous populations finally ended their status as tutoring populations to gain full citizenship that recognizes their right to manage and implement their own education systems, healthcare, and territorial rights. Although basic education levels are being provided by the communities with the support of the state since mid-90s, it was just in the beginning of the 2000s that the first Indigenous students started to claim and enter public university seats, especially because in that period, the debate around affirmative action and quota systems were being discussed and later approved as law. In the paper I presented in New Delhi, I asked the question, how a woman became the main subject of a pioneer anthropological course planned and developed alongside Indigenous students. Since then, since the 2000s, the number of Indigenous students entering university is annually increasing, and worldview conflict is at the core center of unsuccess or success of those students, once they come from a differentiated educational system implemented by their own people and face university and its colonial and Eurocentric origin and modus operandi. Because of that, efforts are being made to produce and create an academic atmosphere where Indigenous students are not perceived as challenged intellectually, as they are commonly viewed even by many of our colleagues in humanities, but quite the opposite. A way for university to produce what first and second generation of university Indigenous students in Brazil call connection of knowledges. The curriculum of Indigenous education at the communities emerged from a complex process of negotiation between what they agree as important to be taught and to their own, and the need to warranty a Western formation so they can get to higher education and provide to the communities with the professionals needed, such as doctors, teachers, social workers, engineers, and so on. The project, as I perceived from my students, is to have them back at the communities after finishing the degree, and in almost 4 years as head of the tutoring program for Indigenous students at the Federal University of Bahia, only 2 of them decided to permanently reside at the city, and those are the ones who get higher position in offices at state. The rest of them all want to go back to their community after getting their degrees and are much committed to use all the knowledge from the university for the well-being of their people. But there is a problem in that project. Bahia has over 30 different Indigenous societies, each one of them with different point of views educational systems, sets of values and beliefs, even though self-called as people of old contact. Once Bahia was the place where the boat of the invader first hit the Americas, the differences are still there, and the plurality of worldviews bring to the table a diversity that university, as it is in Brazil, is not prepared for. This is why our energy has been dedicated to build an intense and continuous dialogue with indigenous students, leaders, and social movements, some strategies of teaching that are in strict synchrony with indigenous projects for university. In late 2022, I brought to the students at our group a governmental demand for the curricularization of out-of-campus and community-based courses as part of obligatory curriculum for all higher education courses in Brazil. After extensive debates in our weekly meetings, we created a model of a discipline. The first principle was to reframe Bahian history with the history of the different peoples in the state, and for doing so, it was important to teach a plurality of voices from indigenous leaders, anthropologists, indigenous researchers, elderly men and women, and indigenous civil servants. Once the model was developed with them, we had to approve the course in the Department of Anthropology, which is not a simple task. The course was titled Memories of the Struggle and Resistance of Indigenous Populations.
Can you go quickly, please?
Yes, in the North region of Brazil, a title that could be taught many times in many ways. So we developed a course around the biography of Josefa Ferreira Pataxó, the first woman who lived in the end of the 40s, beginning of the 50s, who were very much important in the fight for land for Pataxó people in the extreme south of our state. So we created some pedagogical materials.
We are not listening to you.
For indigenous students. Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. Excuse me you can maybe talk more in the answer of the question. Then now I pass for our colleague Marisa Ruiz from Mexico, Chiapas, to discuss and do some questions for all the presentations. Marisa, can you come?
Yes, I am here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam and Martha Patricia Castañeda, for organizing this event. And also thank you to Felipe and Susana Rostañol, that were the last organizers of this commission. I found very important the organization of those kind of events. I'm a queer feminist anthropologist from Chiapas, Mexico, and I will give some comments to this panel. It is very difficult to try to talk about all the different reflections that you gave in this panel, but I found very interesting the reflections of Professor Nika Mehrotra about feminist anthropology in India, that was at the beginning of this panel, because we can see the paths of the fields in different parts of the world. And I think that we should try to make more connections through different feminist anthropologists that are working in different parts of the world. Actually, I am part of a group here in Mexico that is directed by Martha Patricia Castañeda, and we are thinking about the paths of feminist anthropology in Mexico, in Central America, and in the Caribbean. And I think that in this panel we saw how different feminist anthropology is in different parts of the world. And we listened to greet Kirsten from Argentina, and also Nimisha John from India, and Rim Kassem from Egypt, and also from Poland, Katarisa Kosmala, and also Sumit Sauraba from India, and Felipe Martins from Brazil, and Saptarshi Bairaji from India. And we heard about different approaches of feminist anthropology in different parts of the world. And I would like to make some like general or main questions. I don't know if someone wants to answer, but I am very interested in feminist epistemologies and in feminist methodologies. And I was thinking when I listened to you, what are the particularities of feminist anthropology in your work? What is the point that makes feminist your work? And I think that this is like a very interesting point that we should reflect. For example, can you tell me if the subjects that you select are like different from an androcentric approach? Maybe this is very innocent to ask, but I think that when we reflect about what kind of subjects or participants are collaborating with us, we can see the differences between feminist anthropology and an androcentric approach. And also, I would like to ask you if your methodologies make feminist your work. And a final question that I have for all the panelists is that not for all the panelists, but for the panelists that work with queer people. But I think that maybe also the other panelists can contribute to this, because there is another debate in feminist epistemologies about who are the subjects of feminist anthropology. And I would like to ask you what is the difference to work with women, and what is the difference of working with queer people, because here in Mexico we have a lot of debates about this, and we are starting talking about the differences between feminist ethnography and transfeminist ethnography. And I would like to ask you if you see a difference between those kind of ethnographies or not, and if you see that transfeminist approaches or transfeminist ethnographies can complement the way in which we are doing anthropology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marisa. It was very important questions, theoretical and methodological questions that I will pass for you to answer. You have a question from Carmen Rio to Professor Nilika. She asked. Professor Carmen Rio sent a lot of questions. One is, they are here in the chat, if you can read. One is, Nilika, I am following a British podcast, Empire, and so far they have not mentioned the role of women in the uprisings in India that preceded independence. Could you speak to us about this topic? And she asked for Sumit. Sumit, we have a IUS Commission on Pandemics that is developing a project on perception of the vaccine during COVID-19. Have you identified any gender difference in the perception of the vaccine? Also, the Publishing Council of WCAA, we observed a different outcome in publication during the pandemic. Men publish more, while women publish less than before the pandemic. Is it true in India? Is it true in India? Then I don't know if there is more questions, Evelyn, in the chat of Zoom. If there are, you can put here. And I will pass for Nilika, and I will ask for all of you to have 3 minutes to answer the questions, or one question, one thing. I know it's not a lot of time, but it's the time that we have. Professor Nilika, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I have also answered Carmen's question in the chat box. There is now a lot of literature on women's role in the independence movement, and I did mention about Gandhi's call to women in for participation in the independence movement. So historians have been writing a lot. Geraldine Forbes and Maitri Chaudhary has written, great Mohini Anjum. They have written a great deal. I have given some names in the chat box. And along with that, in these uprisings were going on from pre-independence to post-independence period also, especially the peasant struggles and tribal struggles. And there is work by Gail Omvet and Elena Sen and many others. So those names are there. The second question, I would take from Marissa about the feminism in the local context, and what is feminist, and so on. So there are different ways in which feminism has been looked at. So historically, if you look at especially women's scholarship in Indian anthropology, you find them not directly working on the gender issues, but if you look at it from the gender lens, you do find a lot of discussion, especially in the tribal ethnographies. The secondly, I think there has been also they are trying to answer the question: is there an indigenous feminist anthropology? Is there a possibility of indigenous feminism? So we have a theory of Shakti. Shakti is a Hindu concept, and it is it is power. So basically, a number of scholars have actually looked at what constitutes feminine power, and so this is one. And secondly, Indian anthropology is also at the confluence of Indology and ethnography, of course, history as well. So a lot of work like Iravati Karve looked at the epic Mahabharat, and she looked at the role of Draupadi and also trans people in Mahabharat epic. And she did this in 60s. So in one of her fictional narrative text, she used a feminist lens to look at text from Hindu tradition. So there are several such instances. As well as methodologically, a large number of these women scholars have written, autoethnographies. So they have written their own about their lives. Like Parvathamma has written about her life as a Dalit, as a lower caste, individual, and who rose from a very, very humble background to to being a professor. So you have now tribal scholars, indigenous scholars coming in. Yeah, so I think reflexivity is the key here, and so that that kind of apprises the feminist anthropology in India. So thank you for this.
Thank you very much, Professor Nelika. Then I will pass for Grit to answer.
Yes, thank you. Just to answer a little bit the questions Marisa, general questions Marisa rose. So I think when we talk about feminist anthropology or decolonizing knowledge, so we should draw our attention to epistemologies of the body, so to actively recognize this in the field, for example, of anthropology of dance. So there are mostly female scholars, and so we do intellectual work, but we also do bodily work. And then we develop methodology who actively recognize the body as a producer of knowledge. So when we talk about epistemologies and knowledge in general in academy is supposed to be an intellectual work which comes from our mind and from our intellect. And so we usually do not get credit for other kinds of work. So for example, during pandemics, I did a lot of performance work where I tried to experiment with camera, with my own body, to also to develop pedagogical material for students where I perform and I try to express something with my body. But we do not get any credit for this in academy. So I have to present, you ask, how many papers you have published and or how many books you have published. And so I think here is where we should actively always recognize and consider us as feminist anthropologists, that it's only possible a turn when we also recognize and include, or when our students present some work. So sometimes I ask students that they present a non-verbal or a non-written contribution at the end of the semester or for a work, so that we also the students involved, and that to show them when we work with indigenous students, for example, sometimes it's easier to express with the body, and it's easier to show results when they get creative and when they get a task, not only to present a monography or a written piece of text. So, and it is about ourselves, so that we inspire students doing some other alternative work, and that we also recognize that, and then to bring or to go to a congress or to a academic meeting and show every time we go that there is bodily knowledge, and we should recognize that the body is total, with subjectivities, with emotion, with feelings, and to actively take seriously what is our human body, and with all things related to sexuality, and there are a lot of issues. So maybe this is a way to discuss more, and also to involve our students to think more about a diversity of knowledge production, not only the text. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Can please the next one, Nimisha, can you answer?
I will also try to answer the question of feminist ethnography, because I worked with transgender people. So what I understood through my work, because self-reflexivity is something that we always talk about when we think about feminist ethnography. But through my work, what I understood was, rather than stating self-reflexivity just for the sake of it, we can also think of, how actually it can interrupt, or it can actually give an understanding of the category of women itself. Because my work is, with the transgender people, but through my ethnographic approach, through my self-reflexivity, what I tried to bring forth, how it actually can extend our understanding, or how it can actually broaden our understanding of the category of women. So, I think this is our time to think more about this. We have to come out of this inside or outside a binary, and we have to think about how these actively, all these identities are intersecting with each other, how these identities are porous, relational, and how it actually disrupt or how it actually help us to think more about what are the intersections or what are the meeting points of all these categories. Because when my interlocutors were stating that, okay, we are all identifying all this way and we are ascribing this category to you as well as a woman or as a cisgender heterosexual, this can actually give a better insights on, all these categories are available to all of us. It is not just about transgender people, it is not just about women or men. It can be, we can play with all these categories. So yeah, that is my comment on the question of feminist ethnography. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nimisha. I don't see Katarzyna neither Wim here in the room. Then I will pass to Professor Sumit to answer, please.
Thank you for the question. As far as feminist epistemology and methodology are concerned, what I attempted in my paper was to deconstruct Eurocentric understanding of leisure on the basis of gender, with certain limitations. Now, for an example, we can ask, or one can ask, if a mother is playing with her child or children, can it be seen as a leisure activity, or in different contexts, can it be seen as a work? So what I think is that the greatest advantages, one of the greatest advantages of feminist epistemology is to arrive at a very nuanced understanding of how, taken for granted, we have taken androcentric sociology and we have named it sociology. This is my humble submission. And regarding two questions which have been put up in the YouTube, and the first one is difference in perception to vaccine on the basis of gender. I still have to look into it because those were the times which were difficult times, and it was very difficult to look into how women are perceiving the vaccination and how men are perceiving. And definitely in India, when we look into this, we have to take into consideration, as Professor Nilika has pointed out, the caste and community and ethnic racial perception. That would be my response. Now, the second one was men published more and women published less in comparison to the men. That again will fall into the purview of, I will have to attempt a scopic review of the published literature during those period of time. And I'm thankful that these have been pointed out. Definitely, I will look into it. If time permits, may I add to what Professor Nilika had to say regarding the women's role in the pre-independence movement. Now, I just wish to add that we need to bring in what Ambedkar had in his mind. Now, Ambedkar saw colonialism in two different strands. The first was internal colonialism, which is equal to Brahminic caste-based colonialism. The second one was external colonialism, which means British colonial empire. Now, in 1927 March, Ambedkar took out a very, very significant struggle to have access to public water tank in Mahar movement, that is in Maharashtra. Now, in 1930, 3 years later, the same March 1930, Gandhi had salt satyagraha to oppose British colonial empire. In both the movements, we see that women were at the forefront. But can we say that in the salt satyagrahas, Gandhi's movement, women were participating in a nationalist movement, whereas women participating the quote-unquote ex-formal untouchable movement participating in Ambedkar's Mahar movement were into anti-caste, anti-Brahminic movement. So it is high time that we need to deconstruct the idea of nationalism, national movement, not only on the lines of gender. And again, I bring back what Professor Nilika had to say. We really need to take into consideration what Sharmila Rege, what C. Palfama had to contribute in terms of caste identity. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sumit. Then I pass to Saptarshi.
In my paper, looking at the feminist ethnography and feminist epistemology, the first thing I try to look at from the understanding of experiential ethnography, because when I'm doing ethnography or anything, any social science research or any kind of research, this body is just not a body. It's having a huge amount of positionality in the research, because we cannot look away from the understanding of appearance, and the appearance which is connected with the appealing, which is connected with sexuality and sex. Because here in experiential ethnography, I'm using my body as a tool of research, because it can bending with the gender, it can bending with the appearance also. And the more and more feminist epistemology is coming here in the queer research, where the queer people itself are coming out and then they are doing the research over themselves, which is at the same time critiquing the heteronormative understanding of the queer people. Because looking at the history, there is a huge amount of heterosexual ally or heterosexual people made the queer people as a subject of research and doing the research. But now the positionality of epistemology got changed, where the queer people are coming out and they are rectifying the history and rewriting their own history. And that is also a change of epistemology in itself, the feminist research. So it is much more into trans, queer, subaltern, or emic perspectives or epistemological perspectives is coming in the research of feminist ethnography or feminist anthropology in all over the world. I think I have.
Thank you very much, Saptashi. It's very quickly answer is great. Felipe, for you, please, 3 minutes.
No, I'll be very quick. Thank you, Marisa, for the question. What makes our work feminist? This work that I'm doing with the indigenous students, the indigenous students don't call themselves, even the girls and women, they don't call themselves feminist here in Bahia. They think of feminist movements as a white Western movement. So they talk more about the well-being project. We are fighting, we are struggling for our well-being. So, but what does my work can be classified as feminist? I think the collective work that we do on building the curriculum, we work a lot in intergenerational academic work to face concrete problems. So we are very engaged, and the kind of engagement that we put through with our work comes from feminist theories, my feminist background, and our work is centered on marginalized voices, especially women's, to retell well-known histories where men were in the center of the telling of the story. So we are recentering the history of indigenous populations in Bahia, giving women the place that they owned and were left out in previous ethnographies and history of the indigenous populations in our state. That's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Felipe. And well, thank you, everyone. It was a wonderful session. We learned a lot, and you saw that there is so many connections between all the feminist approach that we have in all parts of the world represented here. Then now I will pass the conduction to Martha Patricia for the second session. Thank you for all.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.
It was a very, very provocative first session. Now we will start with a brief communication of Gabriel Daron, and then we will continue with our speakers. Gabriel, please.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you so much for this very thought-provoking conversations that we're having. Not to take much of your time, apologies to Carmen, who had contacted me to send her this call for panels, and somehow within my head, I missed that. So this is just a reminder for the WAU Congress taking place next year, that call for panels has been out, but also, interestingly, you can have 2-in-1. Why just attend the WAU conference when you can actually also attend the Southern Anthropology Conference, which will take place a few days before the WAU Congress. So it's just a matter of a few more days before the WAU Congress, and you can two conferences in one. Just to share briefly the 2 pages, and I will send this to Carmen, who will be able to actually then share this with everyone, the links as well as the posts, the calls themselves. So again, if you want to get traffic into the pages, you can go straight into the WAU page, the WAU and Anthropology, Southern Anthropology page, where you simply just click on call for panels and you will get to this page. The most important date for now is that the call for panels will be closed on the 22nd of January. The themes that have been covered are all on the call, so you will be able to get very interesting themes that will align with a lot of your work. And the conversations being held here definitely have space in these conversations. I mean, for instance, the coloniality and criticality, you can look at it from different perspectives from what the conversations we've been hearing here. Changing fields of anthropological sub-disciplines. So there are a lot of sub-themes and themes that can emerge from this commission that can actually become panels within the WAU Congress. But like I said, we also have the Southern Anthropology Conference, which will take place a few days before that. And so if you go to the anthropology page and you click on this link, it will take you to this document, and that's what you'll find. And the key date for now with the anthropology conference, with the Southern Anthropology Conference, is that the call for papers and abstracts and panels are all together, unlike the WAU Congress, which is separated. And the call only closes on the 1st of March. And like you will see, we've said first call for panels, papers, films, workshops, art installations, etc. Because we're saying a conference cannot just be about PowerPoint presentations. We can call it unconferencing, and it can literally be any form of presentation that individuals might want to carry out. That is it for now, but these links will be shared with Carmen and Felipe, and they will be able to email that to everyone. Thank you so much, colleagues, for giving us the space and time.
Thanks to you, Gabriel, and we hope to meet there, all of us. Well, we are going to begin the second panel. And give me a second, please, because I did something wrong here. Well, we will start with the presentation of María Soledad Cutuli from España and Argentina, The Making of Social Inclusion, Your Trans Women in Argentina, Anthropological Notes on Labor Politics and Policies. María Soledad, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you, Patricia, and everybody for accepting me here. I am Soledad from Argentina, actually. I'm working now in Spain. I will try to share my screen now. Then you please tell me what are you watching, if they are my notes or the complete screen.
We don't know. The complete is not.
Okay. Desde el principio here, and
now it's okay.
Is it okay, or are you watching the notes?
It's the cover of the...
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I change the slide. It's okay?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So, well, I'm a social anthropologist and ethnographer from Buenos Aires. I'm a professor of anthropology at the University of Buenos Aires, where I teach political anthropology and gender studies. Now I'm currently on leave, working at the Complutense University of Madrid as a Marie Curie Fellow. But also what I wanted to share with you is that I'm currently coordinating the network for the anthropology of gender and sexuality of EASA, which is the Association for Social Anthropologists in Europe. So I'm very excited and willing to collaborate in my capacity of coordinator of that network, to be included in all these wonderful initiatives in the global sphere you are making it happen. So now I will share my paper. I will be talking a bit about my current research on social and labor inclusion policies for trans women in Argentina. As you may know, in 2021, Argentina passed a law for job quotas for trans people. At the public sphere, it had the intention of offering at least 1% of these positions for a population considered vulnerable, and it also included the private sphere and some benefits for cooperatives. So the first question was how to develop an ethnographic insight into this process. I started thinking about proposing a category that is broad, and thinking about the category of initiative to include ventures that were both driven by the state, but also by social organizations, and in different scales of the public policies. Since one of the conceptual starting points implied considering the agency of the state and the social organizations together. And also I proposed a broader spectrum of research that allowed us to consider not only sustainable venture or successful, but also everything that was or truncated or unfinished or could not materialize during time. And because I wanted to think about the mechanisms for formulating and managing these policies, and also the social meanings associated with the idea of work for this population. Sorry, I am a bit under the weather today, but I think I'm okay. So I will divide my presentation in 3 short parts. The first one is discussing the novelty of the issue. The second one is addressing 3 of the case studies I'm dealing with. And the final remarks, the third part, has to do with my goal of moving beyond cis-sexism in social studies of work. When discussing the novelty of the issue, we must think about that trans organizations in Argentina have been struggling since the 90s, and they have accomplished a lot of things that we are looking in the screen right now, like struggling against police harassment in street-based sex work, also struggling against criminalizing codes, debating on the status of sex work, or debating also on the subject of feminism, and also the category of women itself. You know, finally, we found we accomplished a very progressive gender identity law in 2012, and keep on claiming for basic rights. So this idea of claiming for access to work is not new, but has always been an issue for this this collective movement. One of the three dimensions that we can study this process has to do with the implementation at a state level, and how these quotas have been designed and implemented during the last government.
Sorry, Soledad, 1 minute, please.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I will rush my slides. Just to sum up, these three dimensions have to do with the quotas of public administration, the private sphere, and discussing the one idea of naming this pinkwashing without tracing the social and political relationships behind this implementation of quotas. And at the third place, the role of cooperatives in designing a way out of sex work for this population. I collected some outcomes. I think there are a lot for the time I have already, but one of the key points have to do with the persistent tensions between the idea of work and the idea of sex work or prostitution, depending on who's talking. And the second has to do with the socialization on the workplace, like all the contradictions of becoming a worker itself and an identity as worker. And the third one addresses the fragility of also, not only the fragility of this population, but also the fragility of the initiatives that are absolutely craft-based and with a contingent character. We can discuss it further in the question and answer part. I also had this idea of this process being contradictory, incomplete, and paradoxical, and some to wrap up some empirical challenges we still have. Mostly the one I want to highlight is how to map this historical failure of these initiatives. Then a kind of conceptual challenge that has to do with how to strengthen a political anthropology perspective to analyze the processes of demand and constructions of these initiatives, and how to embrace trans studies to question cis-sexism in social sciences of work. Finally, has to do with the methods, how to design a perspective that is both ethnographic and diachronic, and how to inhabit an amphibious position to deal with these issues. So thank you very much. You can contact me in this email, and if you scan the QR code, you can go straight to my papers, so you can read further. And finally, there's a link.
Sorry, Soledad, we are over the time.
Okay, and
sorry.
This is the link for the EASA network. Thank you very much. Sorry for the delay.
Thanks to you for the effort, and we have to adjust to the time. Well, I won't comment. I make place to Neisenu Apon Regma from India with the presentation of Reading Gender in Textile and Pottery, a case study on Regma Naga Tribal Society. Please go ahead.
Hi, am I audible? Hello?
Everything is okay. Oh, now your presentation disappeared.
Okay. I just lost connection now, so I'm getting back to it from a better. connection here. I'm from, so, but am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then I'll just straight away start off. This is actually, a different, I have sent a new slide, but can I please request to be the third presenter if you can let me after another one, because I'm trying to connect from my.
Okay, don't worry.
Please,
Don't
I'm so
worry.
sorry.
Don't worry. So we can watch now a video from Margaret Bullen from Spain about the contributions of feminisms to Basque anthropology and beyond. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'll be talking.
Oh, something happens.
About the contribution of feminism. Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'll be talking about the contribution of feminisms to Basque anthropology and beyond. Euskal Herria is the native name for the Basque country, literally the land of Basque, the land where the Basque language is spoken on both sides of the French and Spanish border. Basque feminism takes off in the period of transition after the death of the dictator Francisco Franco in 1975, a period when life changed rapidly, especially for women. Teresa del Valle, mentor and founder of Basque Feminist Studies, always told us to nurture the relationship between the feminist movement and anthropology, and she was one of the pioneers who during those effervescent years was responsible for introducing feminist and gendered anthropology to the Spanish state, along with others like Dolores Juliano or Berenice Stolke, amongst many others. Del Valle directed a study that was to be the turning point in Basque anthropology, Basque women, image and reality. This work challenged the myth of the matriarchy, purported by scholars such as José Miguel Barandiarán and Julio Caro Baroja. After this work, the movement spread and expanded into the mid-80s and the 90s, like ripples in the water. We had centres for gender studies opening all over the country, more and more topics on gender in the different conferences that were given. New courses in universities, initially optional subjects in undergraduate courses, later obligatory courses. And with them we moved, theory moved rapidly from woman to women, from women to gender, from gender roles and representations to gender systems. At the same time, there was a period of consolidation in the 1990s where feminist studies took the place or came alongside gender studies with masters, PhDs on all sorts of themes, but always keeping the ethnographic slant that Teresa had brought for us. With her team, with people like Carmen Diaz or Chemia Paulaza, they continued to see where gender was in doing Basque culture and language in studies like this one on the Corrica. Later, in the issue of the Alardes of Irún and Hondarribia, we had a classic case to study performance, ritual and heritage, which goes on today, a theme that I've been studying for the last 25 years. Del Valle also taught us about methodologies, how to do feminist anthropology, using metaphors like cracks, milestones, or chronotopes with the confluence of time and space. Mariluz Esteban followed this idea of plotting developments in her proposal to do itineraries of the body in what she calls the somatization of anthropology, looking both at the ethnography of the body and the emotions. Johnny Miren Hernandez, along with Esteban, also has worked on reflexivity and autoethnography. She's brought in perspectivism to her studies of Basque improvising verse to look at the way body and language and voice go together. Many different social themes that show that the feminist movement and anthropology still go hand in hand in the Basque Country. Themes that are to do, especially these days, with decolonial feminist theory and racialized women of the Basque Country who care. Care and age being some of the hot topics today, as well as gendered violence, sexist violence, and violence against women. This then is clear. The first conference of feminist anthropology in San Sebastián, June 22nd, the corpus of feminist anthropology is well established. The women who pioneered it have been recognized. Innovative methods, techniques, and theories are emerging all the time. But the question perhaps remains that how far has that feminist anthropology influenced Basque anthropology as a whole? Thank you very much.
A very interesting video. And I don't know if Neiselu, are you ready? Perhaps not.
Yes, I
Yes?
am.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll please request the organizing committee to please share my slide. I couldn't join from my laptop, so my voice may not be as audible as I want it to be. However, I thank the organizing committee for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, Chairperson. So I'll just very briefly tell about what I had presented in the panel in the World Conference that was held in Delhi. I talked about the reading gender in textile and pottery among the Naga tribe, which was a case study on Ringma Naga women, which is in India, a tribal community from Nagaland. I'd request for the next slide, please. Women histories are harder to excavate, but can be glimpsed and sometimes uncovered if you know where to look and if you want to tell those unheard stories. It is a quote from Greta Lerner, and I try to recover or try to rewrite the history of women by studying the Ringma tribe, which is one of the small indigenous tribes in Nagaland. And they are a community, a society, which is based on patriarchal and patrilineal system. They have a very strong warrior tradition, and identification of most of the warrior honor is made through the attires one adored, and it carries different meanings and significance. Women, as we know, has been at least half of mankind and have been essential in the making of history. This study was an attempt to recover the women as subjects and agents in the making of history. I tried to capture the socio-economy and cultural tradition of the Ringma women, who were excellent weavers, potters, and great repositories of culture and folk tradition. And I want to again, thank Professor Nilika ma'am for talking about how the earliest colonial the writings about the tribal community had been done by colonial writers, ethnographers, and monographs, and she had elaborated on that. And even in our Nagaland, and particularly in the Ringma tribal community, it was J.P. Mills, who had written the monograph, and it was the first kind of a writing done about this tribal in writing in English. And later we have other ethnographers also writing, and we have diaries. For instance, the diary of a wife of a British officer whose name is Connie Shakespeare, which I would like to mention here. She wrote about the indigenous women and their life, but most of their writings have been about they studied the Nagas on behalf of the science based on comparative methods. And it was a cultural comparison, and they at times and many a times they would reflect or represent the history of the tribal community, of the Ringma tribal community, as savage, as barbaric, as uncivilized, and the colonial attitude is read in most of their perspective. So it is an attempt here to try to rewrite that, and also question the colonial writings and in a critical manner. The next slide, please. Yes, I think we can. So in here, I've tried to use gender and woman as a central of analysis. And then try to see an alternative source and rereading of the conventional sources and recover the woman's agency. So the history of the Naga tribal people is mostly orality and its oral tradition. So I had used that material, oral traditions, to uncover the role and the contribution of women in the pre-colonial, and which seems to be continuing even now. Next slide, please. I would try to show more of pictures. Next, please. This is the map, the location. Next slide. Next slide, please. I think we can go to the next slide. I'll just like to show the picture to the people. Yes. The previous one. Yes. Weaving among the Ringma Naga society is an enormous importance. Weaving begins as soon as the first fruits of the new rice have been eaten. We also see that as a atsuketi. It's a type of an Indonesian tension loom. So we find that it was girls from 7 to 6 years, 6 to 7 years until, till their old age, they are a part. This weaving is a part of their culture. They learn and they weave together. We also see that a loom is so typical of a woman's possession that men may not step over or even touch one. They use bamboo knives, bamboo needle, which are very common. We also see that the traditional knowledge that they have is very important. We also see that they practice dyeing and weaving, painting on cloth. We also see that when I'm talking about that, I'm not I want to dwell, because of the paucity of time, I want to dwell more on the meanings and the weavers themselves, not the technicalities of how it's done, because most of it has been recorded by the earlier writings, but the stories about the weaver themselves has been left out. So I want to focus on that. There were spinning parties, in the Ringma community, where girls came together in sleeping houses, sleeping houses like a dormitory known as katsu, and then they weave together. According to Verrer Elwin, who had written about the Nagas in his extensive work about the tribals in India, he called this dormitory as dear nurse of arts, as it was vital organization of the village life. We also see that weaving is a practical and a healing art, and I'd like to elaborate on that, because it is here that I would like to bring the stories, true folk songs, and visualization of mythological subjects, oral transmission of traditions. We see that there was this immense role played by the Ringma women in this context. The life of remembering and reconnecting with their foremothers and unlearning today is very essential. So I'd just like to bring the previous slide, where where the woman
Sorry,
is weaving, and then
just
there
a
is a
minute.
poem that has been written at the back. Yes, back. Yes, this one. I just want to tell about the next slide, which talks about the poem. Yes, may my hands be as strong as Undu. Undu is the god that they used to worship earlier times, who was known to be the creator. It was kind of an emotional act that they did. They chant about. The second is, may they be as quick as the hands of Tongwisu and Loilu. Loilu and Tongwisu were supposed to be as sisters, legendary sisters and weavers who were so renowned in this village, who has supposedly woven entire clothes, spun everything, woven in a complete one material in one night. So the women in this village used to chant their the shiros of weavers, and then they used to praise. So this poem itself, or maybe we can say this is a song kind of a thing, a chant that they used to do, talks about and revere a woman, and we can see this as a healing and a practical art, bringing about this subjects. And the next slide, we find that there were
but
yes.
you have to finish, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So we do have this kind of clothes which signify the status differences. The 4 clothes there is worn by men, and the 3 ones is worn by the woman. It can be worn only among the highest honor people who have given the feast of merit. And I think I'll just keep this. Next slide, please. The next slide, it's about, again, next slide. I just want to bring about the pottery. Yes, next slide. Yes. Then we have the potteries who were being done. We have they still continuing this kind of pottery making. The women, they made pots, they had genas, they had taboos related with it, and the clay, everything from the processing to everything was done by the woman. Then they proposed to make such pots with so much of meanings attached to it. This is me when we went for field research with them, documented the entire process for 3 days. And there are some women who are still trying to preserve the traditional knowledge and doing this. So they are, I can call them, and I call them as women anthropologists who are preserving that, maybe in a not conventional traditional way of how it's done, but in their own sense, they are preserving and they are documenting the history of women's role. So, in conclusion, I tell that in the anthropologies hailing from the Western and the non-traditional culture perceive gender system of studied societies very similar to the asymmetrical gender system. So, but they fail to understand and interpret the egalitarian or at least differential gender relation present in other traditional societies. So, and I quote Abraham Lotta, who is an anthropologist, indigenous. He talks about how in a way, others who are writing about the history or anthropology recording, they fail to appreciate better, to understand in the cultural context of the art, of the indigenous people, because of the external gaze, miss the key characteristics of the older system. Please, yes, I think I'll conclude here. I really thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks to you. I'm sorry, we have to adjust the time. I insist.
Yes. And I'm really apologize for my technical defect, and the network issue that's here. I'm really sorry.
Okay, and I have to ask the next speakers. Please have your 5 minutes. And we have now the presentation of Helen MacDonald from South Africa, fighting for their lives, exploring parenting in between practices for transgender children.
Let me unmute. Hi, everyone. Thank you. When I gave this presentation, I had far more slides, and then I thought I would slash them today, and I'm actually only left with 6, so I should be able to make us up some time for us, Martha. when I gave this paper, it was in a panel that was around violence, around perpetrators and the notion of in-between. And so on the 24th of February 2008, I gave birth to what I thought was a daughter. All the signs were there that I had a daughter. And then at the age of 13, through sobbing tears, having sort of poked and asked some questions, my son burst into tears and told me he was a boy. So it's been an interesting journey since then. And the problem is I've wanted to turn this into a research project around parenting, but I haven't got off my butt yet to get ethical clearance. So it's very much at the moment a kind of autoethnography with permission from my son. I always get permission from him if I'm going to talk about him. So one of the big the points of the research that I want to talk about is that it's only been in the last sort of 10 years, specifically, that the idea of actually raising a gender variant or transgender child is kind of sort of surfaced. And obviously this has come out from the trans community, older trans community that have fought so hard for legal rights and visibility. But there's a whole generation of children now who have got allies with their parents. So one of the things that my research is very much around is parenting. And I'll tell you, obviously I can't speak from a trans perspective, and it would probably be academic suicide if I was to do such. So what I'm particularly interested in is the parents. They are specifically, they seem to be very excluded from research. Research has normally been on visibility or legal rights for the trans community, or it has been around access to gender affirming medical care. So there's a whole area that's sort of left around support networks. And when I say parents, at the moment, I'm thinking specifically around the traditional notion of parents. I do know that not all parents parent, and that in fact parenting may come from other places such as teachers or friends or so at the moment I'm speaking very much about the traditional sort of parent-child role until I get this project more off the ground. So one of the questions I've been asking is, in what ways are trans children parented in South Africa? And how do parents parent in between violences that their children experience? So one of the tropes that I find that I have to deal with, and a lot of other parents deal with, is the notion of fighting for their lives. And I found myself saying this when we told my 88-year-old father that he had a trans grandson. And I remember sobbing down the phone and just saying, Dad, I don't care if you understand or not. I just need you to love him because I'm fighting for his life. So it's a trope. And that trope comes out because of suicide. Trans suicide rates are so high. There's been a number of studies done, and I've listed some of them there. In the Australian one, they found that 48% of trans youth have attempted suicide. We've got several studies from the United States there. And then the bottom one has the most horrendous figures. In another study, 92% of trans adults reported having attempted suicide before the age of 25, whereas the normal rates, whatever normal means, an average rate would be a lifetime suicide attempt of anywhere between 3 and 5%. So there's a big difference between an average sort of non-trans community rate of 3 to 5% and 92%. So we're literally fighting for the lives of our children. Other studies have shown that children who are supported or youth that are supported end up with pretty much the same developmental normative levels of depression within the same age cohort. And then there's been several studies that have pretty much said of all the different support groups that exist around a trans child or trans youth, it's the parents that make the biggest impact. So parental support in terms of keeping a child, relatively safe, with lower depression rates, all of those things a lot of it rests with parents. So one of the things, because I don't have ethics clearance yet, I'm very much only talking about my own son. So if you remember, this panel was around violence. So a lot of my papers that I've given around my son have actually kind of written themselves through WhatsApp, of all things. I think I might even have to write a paper about WhatsApp, as you'll see from this page. So this was me sitting in India at the time saying, hi, I'm giving a paper at the end of this week, but the theme this time is around violence, not joy. I would like your permission to use your story. So I've said, my idea is not the obvious transphobic violence that everybody knows about, but the smaller things, such as the violence of water on your body that made you stop swimming and hate showering, or the looks of people trying to work out your gender, or the lady at the shop, the betrayal of the mirror, the weight gain on antidepressants. The violence of surgery is not one of healthcare, but of cosmetic care, so insurance won't pay for it. So I've sort of then said to him, hey, any ideas? So he's like, yeah, of course you can use it. And then he's added to it, can you talk about other minor things that people say? So I was like, tell me more. So you can see in this WhatsApp conversation that I have with him, he practically writes my papers for me. It's fantastic. I think I need to do a co-authored paper with him using our methodology of WhatsApp, because it's one of the best ways that we talk to each other. So he said, can you talk about the lady at the restaurant saying that trans people were dangerous? And I've said the TERF. I don't know how many of you know the term TERF, but we can talk about it later. And then he's got a friend. Yes, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. So this was a friend's parents saying that he was going to rape him, and then people in my class learning my dead name and threatening to use it against me. People telling me to dress like a guy if I'm going to pretend to be one. And then he said the feeling kind of like a fetish to some of my romantic partners. And then he ended with a guy in his class who refuses to touch me. He thinks I'm contagious. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm out of time, but because the panel was around violence, and that particular arm that you can see in that picture is my son's arm. And that happened while I was in India, that he turned to self-harm in that moment. So there's a real violence of keeping your child alive. And I'll leave it there.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to your son and thanks to you. And now we will listen to the last presentation for Heather O'Leary, Insecure Toilets, Secure Women, Bidirectional Representations of Sanitation Infrastructure at the International Toilet Museum.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to try and do this with timer slides to help me stay on time, so we'll see. Let's see if it'll work. Can you see them? All right. This is me in Delhi. I've been going back and forth for almost 20 years, and I was very surprised to see that in the Basti, or the informal community that I've been working in, that they have now, many of them, built toilets in small facilities attached to their informal homes. In this community, we have water delivered by the city by tanker trucks. We have municipal sanitation workers to sweep out the gutters, which you can see here outside of the homes. And there's been a lot of community engagement and involvement, particularly by women, to be able to keep these sanitation services going. And you can see also in the picture that there's a sign indicating that the community has a free public toilet, although it's only open during certain hours a day. So the women use some local train tracks as an alternative to once a day go and relieve themselves. And that's one of the reasons why many of these homes have prioritized building second stories to their paka or handmade homes in order to build cabins for toilets. But without flowing water, they're still carrying in their water that they gather in buckets like these, many of them reused, some of them from harmful chemicals, in order to store their drinking water and to bail in toilets, which wash out through the pipes right here into the null that go across everybody's homes. By the yellow crate at the bottom, you can see that some of the homes have built ramps in order to get in, and you can imagine what happens during the monsoon. Here's me with my family there. Priyanka, one of my dear friends who I've known for the last 18 years. In this community, they've done formal census work, and in this photo that I'm sharing, you can see some of the lifestyle within these, 8 by 8 foot homes. They do have a formal addressing, so the city is extending more and more infrastructure there. And also in the last couple of years, they've installed electricity meters, and the women have availed themselves, many of which with smartphones. So this can cause a lot of cognitive dissonance when we think about what does it mean to live in an informal settlement, and how do we determine what types of infrastructures are important in life. This is the first time that we ventured outside to the Sulabh International Toilet Museum in Delhi. And there we got a chance to be away from a lot of the other community members and talk about how our lives have changed. We lead these parallel lives as working mothers. Many of them work as informal domestic laborers in middle-class homes nearby the slum or informal basti settlement. And they relate to water and sanitation in very different ways there. In addition, when they encounter ideas about what it means to have better water, sanitation, and health practices, a lot of times because of their proximity to the embassy district, they are the stars, the poster children for embassy visitors who come in to take photos and photo shoots to demonstrate that they have reached the real India. And many of these encounters seem very patronizing to the women. And so when we went to the Sulabh International Toilet Museum, they were really able to sort of see themselves in different ways. Quite literally, when we toured some of these ways that you could build your own pit latrine, but also because of the ways that the museum had engendered this idea of collaboration and partnership really and welcoming in the museum, the women were also seen as agent of stakeholders rather than unilaterally receiving information from the government and sanitation engineers, but really seeing themselves in the cultural artifacts that lined the walls and in many of the models of toilets around. Oh my gosh, we're already at this slide. My 5 minutes is rapidly expiring. I also wanted to invite all of you in the commission to see if you wanted to join our edited volume on invisibilized environmental labor. I know many of you don't potentially consider yourselves working on the environment, but some of the ways that we're seeing climate change and sustainability needs in our communities are happening first by women in domestic and informal ways, thinking about what is sustainability, thinking about when there is a crisis by weather or climate. I mean, I live in Florida. We get a lot more hurricanes now than we used to. Who is the one who's doing the labor of preparing a family for that or making up when things like school are canceled? And what is the hidden and gendered labor of the public sphere and of formal work? So who is actually going going through and making sure that things get recycled in office places, and doing the labor of investigating things like switching out light bulbs. So if you are working in any place where anybody is doing environmental labor that is being looked over, that's important. We also look at queer ecologies. So the ideas that we borrow from queer theory to think about how people on this planet can do care work that extends beyond formal kin and beyond the idea of a kinship with just humanity. That's where we get to ideas of multi-species and eco-kinship. And also thinking about how many of the ways that people are structuring ideas about belonging in the environment is for the next generation, and this idea of directly reproducing the status quo from one generation to the next. So by using queer theories in ecology, we can really think about how environmental change can happen in new and productive ways. So we are at the point of we have interest from University of Colorado Press. They are in love with this idea, and we are trying to make sure that we get many global voices. So please feel free to contact me. Let's collaborate. Here's my email, and it was just such a joy to see many of you and collaborate in India, and I'm thrilled for this commission organizing such a special thing to do, this Congress. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. I apologize because the time is timed, and we have now the comments for Felipe Fernandez. Please, Felipe.
Hi, I'm here thrilled with what we called in Brazil engaged anthropology. So we had all of the papers. I feel we have some attachment, subjective attachment to the field. This is really something that caught my attention. First, with Ragma and also with Maggie, we saw with Ragma the attachment with her own social group and making sense and putting women in the center of the analysis. Also with Maggie, as a British anthropologist who chose the Basque region to live, she completely got in touch with the feminist movement over there and doing a great job. With Helen, I got very emotional, Helen. You made us get emotional, and it's a bit hard to comment such an analysis. I don't think sometimes, Helen, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make a bit longer parenthesis for Helen. Sometimes we get in our meetings from the executive committee and steering committee and all of that, and I get you very strict with all the things you're saying and defending, and very professional and formal. But when you bring such an analysis that put your own subjectivity in the center of the analysis, this is very important for us, because it makes us think about the work that we do and the motivations that take us into field work. And you were saying that you had some ethical questions that you are trying to solve throughout your research. I think being with us in this commission, with Miriam, Patricia, and Marisa, and Grit, and everybody else, Summit, and everybody else, the subjectivity is not a backstage dimension of fieldwork, but it comes in front of everything that we do. So a question that I have for everybody is the place of subjectivity in this, I would say, traditional idea of anthropology as us being distant and kind of being I don't want to say neutral, but what is the place of subjectivity in our fieldworks today? Because all of you are doing fieldwork in such a close manner, and Helen is the radical idea of subjectivity. Heather as well, when she puts in work kinship categories, like my family, this is my family, those are my 18 years old friends. So how do you, all of you who presented today, I know that Maggie is not here, but how do you deal with this proximity and distance approaches in theory? I think this is the right commission when we are talking about feminism. Gabriel, for example, he was on my WhatsApp right now saying, oh, I'm sorry I couldn't stay until the end because I have to pick up the nanny to watch my children. And I was like, my baby. And I was like, no, that's okay, Gabriel. I'll deal with them. I'll deal with, and I spoke to Patricia and Miriam and everybody. Can Gabriel go pick up the nanny? So to be short in my comment, I would like you to explain a little more how each of you dealt with the proximity, if not a mother-son relationship like Helen, but a group relation, a tribal relation like Ragma, or Heather building categories of kinship to explain her relationship with her interlocutors. So I would like you to put in the center of the analysis the question of subjectivity. Could any of you talk a little more about that? Is that okay, Miriam? Should I be longer?
It's okay because we have comments in the chat that I will read. Thank you, Felipe. And Carmen Rial to Helen. I liked your methodology. Have you considered exploring films as well? And your research, which includes this personal experience, will certainly be a great contribution to anthropology and trans studies. And Miriam Grossi, thanks for your presentation, Helen. I would like you to talk a little more about organizations of mothers of trans children and what struggles you are having in South Africa for the implementation of public policies. Arthur da Costa Nova is a young Brazilian anthropologist who studied trans children families. I can put you in contact with him if you want. And Susana Vergara continues a dialogue with Kirsten. And
there's a question for Soledad.
Carmen Rial commented, this is okay. And for Soledad, my question is, what do you think will change in the public policies for trans people in Argentina into the new government of Milei? Heather, could you talk a little more about queer ecology? And please, you have 1 minute or so to comment these questions. We can start with Maria Soledad.
Hi, thanks for your comments and your question. I won't take long. Regarding the role of engaged anthropology in my research, actually, it's like the framework, the broad framework of the approach, I believe, as a queer feminist myself, dealing with political anthropology issues. I believe that the category of experience has to do not only researching, but making these politics and policies happen. So it's absolutely embedded myself as researcher and as an activist in Argentina, and linking this to Miriam's question. I think that you all may be aware that this new government will be a disaster for sexual rights, for feminist rights, and for social justice overall in Argentina. So trans policies and initiatives definitely will be endangered, but all the population throughout, I guess, with this far-right president we're having now. So the issue is absolutely problematic and worrisome. So on my side, that would be the reply. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Ms. Zenu. I don't know if it's correct, but please.
Yes, ma'am, it's correct. It's very correct.
Okay, thank you. Please, you can answer.
On the subject of subjectivity?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for the question. And yes, this has been one thing which I've also been struggling. It has been in my mind and in my field research as well. But I think as history, I think this has been the thing. I mean, if you cannot be subjective, if you cannot, the way history has been represented, even in the past, or it has been subjective, and that's how it gives room for more research to come up, and and social science is, I think, allows you to do that, and that's the beauty about social science, I think, and I think. When you are in that field, and when you know the culture, when you know the language, and when you know the emotions that you are working with, it allows you to open more doors and more aspects to look into, and I think it allows the research to become even more meaningful and richer. So I think yes, I think I think that's it from my end. I think the others can also add in to how, to these questions. Yes.
Thank you. Helen, please.
Sorry, just to answer Felipe really quickly, my whole sense is if you don't bring your own subjectivity into your research, then you're not doing ethnography. So I don't know if that comes from being in South Africa and the ways in which we teach our students, but everything we learn is through ourselves, our bodies, our senses, and everything. So if we can't place ourselves in our research, now obviously my particular topic that I'm taking on now is, you couldn't get closer to my heart. And it literally every day can rip my heart apart. We're now looking for, my child's been in school 3 months this entire year, and I've just taken him out of the last school because of transphobia, and we're looking for a new one. So every day it feels like my heart is getting ripped apart. But you know what? I'm now well into my 50s. I've got the training now. I'm not going to say I don't have my blind spots, but that's where you share your work and you have somebody go, hey, you've been completely blind to these connections. It could well be worth theorizing. So I'm not going to say that theorizing and analyzing is going to come easy. I think one of the hardest things I'm going to have to do is not project my experience and assume that other parents are experiencing it the same way as me.
Thank you, Helen. And finally, Heather.
Well, I am no expert on queer ecologies. I came to it through my work in feminism and the environment. But some of the most mind-blowing ideas are happening, I think, in this field. So if you think about ideas like what is the environment and what kind of environment are we trying to save? Many of us will start to imagine like these lush forests full of like mama and baby animals who are like all snuggly and all of this stuff. who have little homes and things. But a lot of the ways that we think about nature and idealize nature is replicating what we think of as this like status quo of what is development, what is healthy in terms of a more moderate form of development. And so queer ecology asks questions like, well, what about the desert? Why are none of us thinking about the gorgeous beauty of the barren desert as a natural space that's worth fighting over and preserving? Well, because in a lot of ways, it does not come to pass along with our same ideas of like heteronormative, cisgender, formalized economies of this is what production should look like. And so I've been like really jazzed, and I get goosebumps sometimes thinking about deserts as these like very productive spaces. And of course, all of that thinking comes from queer theory. And some of the best ideas from queer theory are how are we so like completely entrenched in our own culture and the dominant culture that's saying this is what development looks like, and this is what like innovative, sustainable development should look like, when actually that logic is rooted in a lot of the things that we're still trying to fight. So when you think about queer ecologies, you think about how are we trying to save a planet that isn't necessarily just for our own lineage or our own sense of like humanity, but our sense of these like narrative kinships that we form with things that are not at all related to us in any way. And you can think about hijras and how they form families and communities using the same narrative process of care work and labor and exchange and mutual self-respect and value systems that we don't necessarily, when we're only thinking about saving the planet and nature in this way that comes from the dominant culture. So I really think that as we think about sustainability and the ways forward, we need to think about it, one, from this like intersectional, feminist, multilingual, transnational, global south, subaltern kind of perspective, where it's not just like English-speaking white men who have the privilege of education who are like leading our environmental change, because like 95% of the ideas in labor are going to come from below. The other big tenet that I think is important is using things like queer ecologies to really shake up our theory and understand that if we keep building our solutions to environmental problems with the same methods and thought that created them, then we're going to get nowhere. So I think that like this is one of the most innovative spaces ever. And I'm sure that everybody on this call does something that has to do with gender, queer, and the environment. And I look forward to working more with some of you guys, maybe if we do some cross-commission stuff or on the edited volume. Please consider it. My time's up.
Thanks to all of you. And with this, we close this part of the meeting. And I want to say a lot of things. I only will say that I think that we have very motivating topics and many possibilities of interchange, so we can continue walking on this path. And Miriam, please, the last part.
Yes, they're so interesting. We would like to continue the discussion and do more questions for all of you, because it's really very interesting about a lot of things that we are learning today. I will pass for Felipe, because now we are, for the closing moment, we will have two manifestos, and Felipe will present the manifestos, and after we will have some colleagues who will talk about the next congress that you have on gender and sexuality.
So now I'm going to present a statement by the International Union of Anthropological and Ethnological Sciences on marriage equality in India. It's important to say that this was approved by our commission, not the board of the IUAES, okay? And we're gonna, after this post-event, we're gonna present it at the executive committee. It was approved in our commission meeting in New Delhi. The members of the Commission on Global Feminisms and Queer Politics of the IUAES gather at the 19th IUAES WAU World Anthropology Congress 2023 at New Delhi, expressed their deep concern on the recent Supreme Court of India's ruling in Supriyo versus Union of India 2023, denying LGBTQIA+ their right to marry, engage in civil unionship, and adoption goes beyond the problem of a categorical distinction on marriage as an institution or a right. It attacks the most intimate aspect of a conscious being, that is, to exercise its autonomy to imagine its own life. Marriage and its legal technological regulation pose different degrees of relief and problem across various countries. However, the agential decision to marry or the human capacity to espouse partnership remains a priori to the debate of the reformation of marriage as a social institution. In essence, the political and legal reluctance to enable people to love, to care, to secure, and to provide for each other actively contributes to the historical project of trans-queer erasure from our collective histories and societies across the globe under a majoritarian moralistic social order. As anthropologists and researchers who have contributed their lives in understanding diverse human cultures and societies, we carry the burden telling and retelling the situated knowledges on the dehumanizing impact of making human rights conditional on certain identity markers like gender, sexuality, caste, disability, ethnicity, so on. Many of us hold different political positions on the institutionalization of marriage and its tendency to operationalize rights, conformity, violence, exclusion, social stratification around it. But it goes without saying that in a democracy, all sections of people must necessarily have their conscience vindicated. The archives, the audits, the law, the languages, the institutions, the homes, all fundamental sites of human meaning making decry the systemic travesty that trans queer persons have faced in the world's most populous nation. To rob the social of a social being is a grave human rights violation beyond any available vocabulary. We urge the Indian judiciary and the government of India to revisit their position on the same. This was the manifesto approved in the Commission of Global Feminisms and Queer Politics in New Delhi. The other one, Miriam? I don't have the feminist.
The other one is a film, is a video. No, Susanna? Yes.
Hello again. I would now like to draw your attention to our manifesto for a feminist university and to thank the organisation for allowing me to do so. It's not a petition I ask you to sign, but rather a proposal to share in the hope that its intention could ring true for you and might be adapted or applied in your own context. The manifesto is the result of a collective effort by a multinational group of PhD students who work with me in the doctoral program of Gender and Feminist Studies in the University of the Basque Country. We work together to socialize and share information and knowledge, both in research and in our feminist action. And we call ourselves Estonk or Eindik, which is a play on words but comes to mean not yet doctors. This manifesto arises out of a proposal by the Basque NGO EMAUS from their area of education for social transformation to write an article on feminism in the university for a publication which would be the university in a context of emergencies, thinking of the quality of university from social movements. The idea was to make proposals, make reflections in the face of what's going on in our in our universities in Europe in a context of neoliberalism, capitalism, and meritocracy. This was also a fruit of UKS, what we call the Critical University Network. This was formed to unite teachers, teaching and research staff, students, and NGOs in an effort to strengthen links between the university and social movements. And we organised a University of Social Movements event, and the publication was part of this. We were asked to reflect upon the contribution of feminism to a project to promote the idea that education should be available to everyone and should assume its responsibility in society. And we did this. We decided to do it in the format of a manifesto inspired by others, such as the Manifesto of the 99%, or by Arutza Bhattacharya-Fraser, or Mariluz Esteban's Manifesto of Old Women. There she says, a manifesto is written in defense of a theme where ideas have grown stale and new realities, even in silence, start to shout out. Our manifesto then is written as a collective dream where we dream with our eyes open. We've asked ourselves two main questions. What kind of university do we dream of? And how do we make our university feminist? We have presented some answers, but there'll be many more and ways to adapt them. And we've published this document in our WordPress blogspot, but we apologize as at the moment it's in Spanish. It's also available in Basque, but not in English or any other language. But we hope to produce a shorter, more manageable document in the future, and we'll be happy to receive any feedback, any suggestions or comments you'd like to make. Many, many thanks.
Well, great. We have two very important and interesting manifestos. If someone wants to say something about them, is the moment. Well, I think all of you agreed with these manifestos, and if we will do more communication and divulgation about these manifestos. Now we will ask for our colleagues who are here to talk about the next conference. Well, Gabriel talked about WAU Congress in South Africa. Maybe Helen can say something more about the WAU Congress. Do you want to say something, Helen?
I can spend a couple of minutes. It's going to be amazing, and you all need to be there. That's probably all I need to say. The call for panels is out, so please get together, put your panels together. I don't know if you saw in the chat, I am looking to put a panel together with somebody. I don't know if it would be around parenting or more on the side of trans. You know, it would be nice to bring a whole lot of different ideas together. So please, 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 the more people that come, the better. Yeah, we're just really excited. We are sticking to the deadlines very, very strictly. So yeah, panels in first, that's the 22nd of January. There's a month where the scientific community will evaluate those panels and then get back to the proposers. And then we open up the call for papers. So hopefully you're going to know very, very quickly or timeously, maybe not quickly, but timeously, so that you can make your preparations. But yeah, we've got a lot happening, and as I think Gabriel said, we've got our local conference. So if you want to come and find out what's happening in Southern African anthropology, it's incredibly vibrant. It's very based around political economy. It's very radical, I think. Our students push us really hard on decolonization. And the last conference we had this year, our students really blew my mind. We hadn't had a conference since COVID, so I don't know what's happened to the scholarship in the country, but anthropology is in good hands in South Africa. So I would love you all to come, and there'll be a discount if you attend both. The call for panels, papers, absolutely everything for the local conference is because lots of our students aren't used to having panels, and they just submit papers and then we put them into various panels. So, you know, it's a local little conference. You know, we're expecting about 150 people, but it would be really nice to see people there as well. If you can spare a few days, and then in the weekend, you take yourself off to the Kruger Park. So that's the plan.
Well, thank you. We are very excited to go to South Africa next year. And I saw that we wrote here in the chat the proposal for a panel about post-gender identities. And I think it's a very good idea. And we hope to have a lot of propositions from panels for our commission in South Africa. Well, I will pass now to Bianca Garcia Peral, who is here, who will talk about the next Feminist Congress in Granada. We saw the video from our colleague Maggie Bullen, who talked about the first Congress who was held in País Vasco, and the next one was in Granada. Bianca, thank you to be here with us.
Thank you. Is the sound okay? Yeah. Okay, thank you to the organization for the opportunity to present this event. My name is Blanca Garcia Peral, and I'm delighted to present the second International Congress on Feminist Anthropology in Spain, el segundo Congreso Internacional de Antropología Feminista del Estado Español. Our motto is "In the streets and in the academy, imagining the present collectively." You can see the Spanish translation in the logo, in the screen, and it will be celebrated the days 1, 2, and 3 of July 2024 in the city of Granada, Spain. I am part of the research group Other Feminist Perspective in Social Research, coordinated by Professor Carmen Gregorio Gil, and with the Research Institute on Women and Gender Studies in the University of Granada. We are very excited to host this awaited encounter. After the celebration of the first International Congress on Feminist Anthropology, as Miriam was saying, which was held in San Sebastián, Spain in 2022, organized by our colleagues at the Basque Feminist Anthropology Research Group, AFIT. The work around feminist ethnography is progressively consolidating in Spain, involving very different areas. We will be hopefully discussing topics around education, health, migration, care, bodies, environmental anthropology, sexual identities, motherhood, reproduction, heritage, urban anthropology, activism, friendship, masculinities, violence, art, childhood, among other topics. And also in different geographies. We will have 24 panels, which will be soon published. And of course, we will have an emphasis on feminist methodologies and ethnographic inquiries around ethics and approaches to the ways that we conduct our researches. The call for papers will be open very soon, and that's it. We are very happy to share this event with you, and we will be delighted to see you all there.
Blanca, thank you very much.
Thank
we will
you.
be there, of course, with a panel about women in the history of anthropology, as we used to do in the IUS conference. And now we pass for another conference in Spain with our colleague Josan Langarita, who will talk about the next CIEDSI. Please, Josan.
Yes, thank you. We'll share my screen with you. No. Okay, yes, the ETSI, it's a conference organized by Red Lies. It's a network of researchers, mainly from anthropologists, but also for other fields, researching in Iberoamerica about gender and sexual diversity. The conference will be in Girona in Spain from 17 until 19 in July in 2004. A few weeks later, then Anthropology is Feminist in Granada. And also at the moment we have 27 symposium there and also an open submission call. There are many different topics: migration and LGBTIQ+, art, history and LGBTIQ, discrimination, violence against LGBTQ. There are many different topics you can search in the website. And we have several keynotes: Siobhan Guerrero from Mexico, Pablo López Navarro from CES, from the University of Coimbra, Mary Torres, also from the Autonomous University of Barcelona, Cristina Garayzábal is a very popular feminist activist in Spain, and Rafael Cáceres from the Universidad Pablo Olavide. The call for papers is open now, but it will be closed in January, 14th of January, and the fees are 118 euros for general early registration, 100 euros. For students is 50 euros, and ordinary registration is 120 and 70. If you need more information, you can search in Google CFC 24, and we are waiting for your papers. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rosen. Now I will ask to put the video from Fazendo Gênero with our colleague Aline Bonetti.
Hi, I am Aline Bonetti, professor at the Anthropology Department of the Federal University of Santa Catarina, UFSC, and one of the co-coordinators of the international seminar Fazendo Gênero 13, an event that will take place from July 29th to August 2nd, 2024 at the campus of the university in Florianópolis, Santa Catarina, Brazil. I and UFSC's Institute for Gender Studies are pleased to invite the international community of researchers, activists, and artists to this international seminar. The proposal for Fazendo Gênero 13 and colonialism and fascism and climate justice against the end of the world is to create an interdisciplinary space for dialogue, exchange, and possibilities of transnational networking, articulating a connection between university and world experiences marked by difference and diversity in the crossing of research, art, and activism. The 13th edition is particularly important because it will be celebrating 30 years of Fazendo Gênero, one of the most relevant seminars about feminist studies that takes place in Brazil. There are many ways to participate in it. For example, you can submit a proposal for oral communications or abstract presentations until January 20th in one of the almost 200 thematic symposiums. There are other possibilities to participate, like many courses, workshops, audiovisual exhibitions, photographic exhibitions, and so on. Well, for more information, please visit our website through the QR code and the end of the video. Well, come to Fazendo Gênero 13. Join us in the fight against the end of the world. It will be amazing to meet you here. Bye.
Well, thank you, Aline. And now I will pass again to Martha Patricia to talk about the feminist program in the ALA, the American Latino Association.
Your mic, Patricia. Patty, you have to turn on your mic.
Yes, we are not.
Now it's right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, next year we will have a 7th edition of the Latin American Anthropological Congress in the National University of Rosario in Rosario, Argentina, from the 11th to the 15th March. And we will have conferences, roundtables, panels, and symposium. In this context, we have a working group titled Feminist Anthropologists and Gender Anthropologists. And this group organized several activities, mainly with 2 basic topics: the genealogies of the feminist anthropology in the different countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, and the other to develop new tools for feminist ethnography and for criticism in anthropology and in ethnography. Now all the calls are closed, but all of you are invited to join us, to come to Rosario and to chat and to interchange with us.
Well, thank you very much, Martha Patricia. I'm seeing here we are exactly in our time. Here, where I am, 11:30. In your where you are, I don't know, but I want to really thank you for everyone to be here. It was a great moment, and well, we are, as Martha Patricia told in the beginning, our proposal is to do twice a week meetings. Then the next one we think to be in the beginning of June, a new virtual seminar, and after we will have a presential more than one, a lot of presential seminars in South Africa in November. There is the program for next year, and well, I hope we will be together in the next seminars. And well, please talk for your colleagues, your students, people, your friends about our network. And we want to really to continue this very exciting discussion that you had here. Felipe, do you want to talk something?
Sure. I would like to thank Carmen, Susie, Evelyn, and all the staff who are Francine, yes, who helped us organize, and Daniel, who did the card for us. And it was very good to see everybody. Saptarshi, my sister from India, and Marisa Ruiz, and everybody. Dr. Sumit. Did you see, Doctor, that Helen was trying to seduce you for a panel in South Africa on the chat? Yes. It was really nice to see another side of Helen, and it was very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you, Felipe. Martha Patricia?
Nothing else. Thanks for everything.
Well, then, thank you, and good week, and good holidays for everyone. Thank you.